Chapter 1166. Won't you know in half a month? Wang Sheng tapped Mei Er's little nose again. I'll keep you in suspense. Let's be amazed together. Wang Sheng never boasted. Since Wang Sheng said that he wanted to amaze the two girls, then the two girls absolutely believed that they would be amazed. They were just too curious and itchy now. It was rare for them to sleep together at night. After the morning class the next day, Wang Sheng went into the workshop again. Mei Er and Rosa began to bargain with the shopkeepers of the various vassal states, asking their kings to write a contract. On the other hand, the two girls began to discuss together to perfect the details that Wang Sheng said. As a result, when the two girls were discussing enthusiastically, the Empress came to see them. She heard bits and pieces of it and became curious, so she joined in the discussion. Since half of the business belonged to the Empress, there was nothing to hide from her. It was a good opportunity for her, who was experienced in fighting in the palace, to give them pointers. Not only the Empress, but the two girls also pulled in Tantai Yao and a dozen sisters who were good at management that they had previously trained. Wang Sheng had long said that talents should be nurtured vigorously. Wouldn't it be tiring to rely on oneself to be busy? Therefore, as long as there were sisters who were talented and interested in this area, Mei Er and Rosa had never been stingy in promoting and nurturing them. Of course, Mei Er's words were to teach the shopkeepers of the various vassal states a lesson and let them know what it meant to earn money in a proper business. Even when those guys forced Mei Er to the corner to collect loans from the pawn shops, Wang Sheng could play them with flowers. And it wasn't an ordinary flower, but a golden flower that made people salivate. However, when the Empress, Tantai Yao, and the dozen sisters heard that Mei Er and Rosa had discussed the early startup part and later income forecast, they were all dumbfounded on the spot. Business could be done like this? How could those heartless pawnbroking and lending businesses earn so many gold coins with a reputation of being kind and charitable? Master said that we don't want anything else. We just want to let those who want to live in a better house realize their dreams. On behalf of Mei Er, Rosa explained the original intention of doing this. That's why our interest rate is the lowest among all the loans. We don't want to make a fortune, but it's good to make some money while we're at it. Even if you can't help others, you'll still make mistakes, right? It was obviously a matter of making a lot of money, but Rosa's words made everyone feel indescribably awkward. The interest rate that Wang Sheng mentioned was indeed the lowest in the market. How could there be such a low interest rate of 10% a year? This wasn't lending money at all. It was clearly doing charity. But the problem was, why was everyone so shocked when they heard about the expected income despite the low interest rate? Those loan sharks are only after a quick deal. We're different. We pay attention to the long term. Mei Er explained, from the beginning, we didn't want a high interest rate. We're taking the path of small profits, but quick turnover. Moreover, we only do house loans, so we don't have any conflicts with those loan sharks. Anyway, the loans were from Mei Er's left hand to her right hand. Those who borrowed money couldn't even see the gold coins, let alone take out the gold coins to squander. Consumer loans were not possible in this world. Only real estate in the capital that could maintain its value could be done in this way. If other families wanted to do it, without the resources of the capital's government, and without such a large amount of gold coins, what could they do? Moreover, could they back up Mei Er, who had several industries that could make hundreds of millions of gold coins a year? As for those officials in the capital, they could forget about it. This was the Empress's industry. To put it more clearly, it was the Emperor's industry. Which official would be stupid enough to fight with the Emperor for gold coins? This was not the ancient times on Earth. At that time, the powerful ministers dared to scold the Emperor for competing with the people. Did the ministers in this world have that kind of moral integrity? Even if there were a few, they would probably be killed by the major vassals. Even the Empress was amazed, not to mention how amazing this plan would be if it was revealed in front of the world. What was even more amazing was that, apart from Wang Sheng, the initiator, all the details of such a big business were carried out by women. From the Empress to Princess Mei Er, and then to Rosa and her sisters, they all felt proud and elated, as if women were holding up half the sky. Everyone had come to a collective decision. They would start carrying out this huge plan after the kings of the vassal states had signed the agreement. They would not even tell the emperor about it. When the time came, they would let him be amazed. They would let him see that even if his empress did not have to be naturally charming and tactful, she could still exude a fatal attraction. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye, as everyone was busy. It was still the middle of the afternoon. Usually, at this time, Wang Sheng would be in the workshop sculpting his work. But today, Wang Sheng had opened the door of the workshop early and walked out. There was still a fine layer of stone powder on his body. Wang Sheng looked like an ordinary jade carving, but he had a smile on his face that made everyone feel comfortable with one look. There were beauties serving around the workshop. Seeing that Wang Sheng had come out just like that, they hurried forward to help Wang Sheng clean off the jade powder on his body. It was like this every day, except today it was a little earlier. "Master, why are you out so early today?" The beauty asked Wang Sheng as she patted him with her horsetail whisk. Her actions revealed the intimacy of a family member, and she addressed him very naturally as master. Of course, these beauties had all gone through the wedding ceremony with Wang Sheng. In theory, they were all Wang Sheng's maidservants. They were all part of the same family, so it was normal to address him as master. "It's done," Wang Sheng replied with a smile. "Where's the old Taoist? I'm going to find him for a drink." He hadn't had a good drink with the old Taoist for more than 2 months. Now that his work was finally done, Wang Sheng definitely wanted to have a good drink with the old Taoist. "The Taoist has been in the training room," the beauty said on behalf of Wang Sheng. At the same time, she didn't forget to congratulate Wang Sheng. "Congratulations, master." When she saw the old Taoist wasn't cultivating. Instead, he was holding a pen and practicing calligraphy seriously. "Not bad." Hearing Wang Sheng's footsteps, the old Taoist looked up and saw Wang Sheng. There was a hint of admiration in his eyes. "You haven't wasted these 2 months. Your temperament has been tempered quite well." Wang Sheng had an additional calmness that wasn't obvious in the past. It couldn't be helped. After 2 months of meticulous sculpting, a slight mistake would make all his previous efforts go to waste. It was hard not to be calm. "Come on, drink with me to celebrate." Wang Sheng smiled and said to the old Taoist, "Come with me tomorrow. I'll invite you to witness my assessment for breaking through to the great grandmaster level. That's worth celebrating." The old Taoist's eyes lit up. His hand didn't stop until he finished writing the calligraphy in his hand. Then he stood up. "What are you waiting for? Let's go drink." Chapter 1167. Early that morning, everyone in Duke Chongqing's residence was in a joyous mood, especially in the inner courtyard. All of the women were smiling, as if something joyous had happened. Of course, there was a joyous occasion, but it was not a wedding or a funeral. Duke Chongqing was going to take part in the Great Grandmaster assessment today, and almost all the people in the residence who knew about this were optimistic about whether Wang Sheng could pass the assessment. Wang Sheng, Mei and Rosa went out together, accompanied by old Taoist Ling Su. They did not go directly to the Celestial Workshop, but invited all the great grandmasters who were going to take the assessment to the original Duke Chongqing's residence. The Pavilion of Delicacy had no objection. Many people from the vassal states came, and they did not want to be harassed by those people. It was more convenient to come to Wang Sheng's place, and they could see a lot of new things. All the great grandmasters and great grandmasters liked to come to Wang Sheng's place. As Wang Sheng's nominal master, Master Lu was definitely present. In addition, there were several great grandmasters in carving, among which at least 3 were carving inkstones and various decorative items. As for the rest, there were a few who made pottery and a few who made jewelry, all of which were related to fine carving. Another special one was Old Qian, who was an appraisal great grandmaster. Old Qian was no longer a half bottle of vinegar. His broadened horizons allowed him to determine the approximate value of the things he saw and the level of craftsmanship at a glance. Therefore, Old Qian was almost a permanent examiner for all kinds of great grandmaster assessments. These were all in charge of the assessment. There were a total of 11 people taking the assessment. The rest were all there to watch the ceremony, including Old Tai and the others, as well as the tailors, blacksmiths, and other great grandmasters in Wang Sheng's residence. Even the great grandmasters of musical instruments had come to watch the ceremony. They were all great grandmasters, so Wang Sheng had to greet them one by one. The assessment venue was the big courtyard outside the original Duke Chongqing's residence's guest hall. It couldn't be helped. There were too many people, and this place seemed solemn. Other than Mayer and Rosa, who had seen the half-finished white jade ball, even the old Taoist did not know what Wang Sheng's work was. Everyone was looking forward to it, because everyone knew that Wang Sheng was a person who often brought people miracles, so everyone was looking forward to Wang Sheng's work. In fact, they were not the only ones looking forward to it. Even the emperor and the empress were very curious. However, the identities of the people present made it impossible for the emperor and the empress to attend the ceremony, which made the emperor feel rather regretful. The spectators sat in the outer circle, the examiners sat in the inner circle, and Wang Sheng sat in the middle. "All right, Wang Sheng, take out your work," Master Lu said to Wang Sheng on behalf of all the great grandmasters after everyone had taken their seats. Master Lu was Wang Sheng's master in name, so they were somewhat master and disciple. Moreover, this was the venue of the great grandmaster assessment, not an official venue. Hence, he addressed Wang Sheng by his name instead of his official position or title. No one felt that there was anything wrong with this. Wang Sheng did not think that there was anything wrong with this either. Wang Sheng nodded at Master Lu and extended his hand to place his work in his storage ring on the table in the middle with both hands. Then he left in a flash. Everyone's gaze immediately shifted to the table in the middle. Wang Sheng's work was placed on a wooden pedestal. The pedestal was very simple. In the eyes of the great grandmasters, it was just a wooden pedestal that was carved out of top-notch wood. It was round, and there was a semicircular groove on it that was just right for the white jade ball. Wang Sheng's work was really a white jade ball. However, it was not an ordinary white jade ball. Instead, it was a concentric ball with a diameter of 15 centimeters, also known as an ethereal crafting ball. On Earth, ethereal crafting balls were balls carved from ivory. Ivory carving balls were also known as concentric balls and ethereal crafting balls. They were extremely complicated to make, and the requirements for craftsmanship were extremely high. During the Qianlong period of the Qing dynasty, the ivory carving artists in Guangzhou used the carving form of stone lions with pearls in their mouths as reference. After careful design and research, coupled with bold imagination and ingenious craftsmanship, they created a new design of a ball inside an ivory ball. The balls could reach up to 10 layers, and modern techniques could even reach up to 60 layers. However, these were ivory carvings, not jade carvings. Jade was extremely hard and difficult to carve. Modern techniques could carve more than 10 layers of concentric balls on a diameter of around 15 centimeters. This was already the limit. The concentric balls carved by Wang Sheng were different. Wang Sheng carved a total of 50 layers of concentric balls with a diameter of 15 centimeters. In other words, with a diameter of 15 centimeters, a radius of 5 centimeters, and a length of 75 millimeters. The thickness of each layer plus the gap was only 5 millimeters. Wang Sheng carved 1 millimeter of the gap, and the rest of the jade was only 0.5 millimeters. Not only that, Wang Sheng also carved a simple formation on each layer. The function of the formation was very simple. It was to make the jade ball of the layer float with the outermost circle as the center. Every layer had a formation, so every layer could float with the center as the center. It was a concentric ball in the truest sense of the word. Each layer was a set of balls, and each set of balls was engraved with intricate and complicated patterns. Just by being placed there, it looked incomparably complicated. Wang Sheng used a thin needle to gently poke from the inside to the outside, and all the balls inside and outside began to rotate with the same center. Everyone present was a martial arts grandmaster in their respective fields. At first, they felt a little strange when they saw Wang Sheng put out a jade ball with exquisite patterns. However, when they saw Wang Sheng rotate each layer, they immediately understood what it was. Which martial arts grandmaster was not an expert in the legendary realm? Just by looking and listening, they could tell that there were at least 30 layers inside. Because of the formation, Wang Sheng could easily control the rotation of the layers inside and outside. After rotating for a while, Wang Sheng easily controlled all the balls to stop. When it stopped, all the carvings had returned to their original positions, neatly arranged into a few conical holes. However, if one looked carefully, the conical holes were also subdivided into dozens of layers. Everyone who was watching this scene was dumbfounded. How could there be so many layers on such a small jade ball? Moreover, it was from the outside to the inside, and the jade ball was not damaged at all. How is this possible? Everyone had no idea how it was carved. Was it from the outside to the inside? Were the conical holes where the work was done from the inside? Wang Sheng, how many layers did you carve in total? Master Lu asked in disbelief as he looked at the concentric ball in surprise. Chapter 1168. 50 layers, Wang Sheng answered calmly. This answer directly caused a series of incomparably clear sounds of cold air being sucked in. At that moment, all the martial grandmasters in charge of the assessment, including Master Lu, stood up and walked to the center. They could not wait to see the details of Wang Sheng's carving. It was also Mei and Rose's first time seeing such a small place. Yet Wang Sheng had carved 50 layers? Furthermore, he had carved it from the outside to the inside. What kind of craftsmanship was that? Although Mei and Rosa did not know much about carving, they definitely knew what was good and what was bad. This kind of craftsmanship was not just about how meticulous the craftsmanship was, but also about how focused one was during the creation period. Given how thin and hard the jade was, a slight mistake would cause the entire work to go to waste. Others might not know about Wang Sheng's strength, but how could Mei and Rosa not know about it? They would not even allow their hands to tremble a little. Old Taoist Ling Su looked at the piece of work and carefully observed the spinning balls inside. He finally understood why Wang Sheng had become so much steadier after more than 2 months. The requirement to be focused at all times was 10 times higher than when Wang Sheng had been training his sniper endurance. Snipers could rest a little when they were waiting for their target to appear, but they had to be fully focused at all times when crafting such a piece of work. One of the most important characteristics of the uncanny crafting ball was its uncanny craftsmanship, which was also how it got its name. Almost all the martial grandmasters present were in awe of Wang Sheng's skill in crafting the uncanny crafting ball of uncanny crafting ball. No matter what kind of industry they were in, a true craftsman would definitely have some extreme requirements in common. While Master Lu was in awe, a few of the martial grandmasters who were sculpting the ornaments had their eyes glued to the uncanny crafting ball. As for a few of the jewelry-making martial grandmasters, they even wished they could use this design on their own jewelry. Everyone watching the ceremony had long been itching to go up and take a look. It was a pity that the martial grandmasters in charge of judging were studying carefully at this moment, so it was not their turn to step forward. Even if they stepped forward, they would have to wait for the martial grandmasters to give their results. A few of the great grandmasters in charge of the assessment fiddled with the balls on the inside of the ring, feeling the extremely stable rotation inside. They carefully observed the traces left behind by Wang Sheng as he sculpted. They couldn't help but click their tongues in admiration. These gasps of admiration made the martial grandmasters watching the ceremony even more curious. They hated that they couldn't just push away the people surrounding them and hold it in their hands to carefully admire it. "Old Lu, you go first," one of the martial grandmasters in charge of the assessment said to Master Lu. "He's your registered disciple after all." Amazing! Master Lu did not hide his affirmation of Wang Sheng at all and praised him without hesitation. "Wonderful workmanship." A ceramicist at the side almost crawled into the conical machining hole as he praised Yang Ming as he observed. "It's definitely uncanny workmanship," a grandmaster in charge of making jewelry exclaimed. Nobody had ever thought that a 50-layer set of balls could be sculpted in such a way. The ingenious design alone was enough to excite the craftsman, let alone the fact that Wang Sheng had sculpted it to the extreme from the start. How stable did one's hands have to be to achieve 50 layers of 15 centimeters? After everyone commented on Yangming's work, Master Lu asked the crowd, "How is it? Can you pass the Grandmaster assessment?" "Old Lu, won't we be a joke if we don't pass?" The martial Grandmaster next to Master Lu laughed right away. "I don't know what else can pass if I can't pass the skill of founding a sect." "That's right," someone immediately added. "It can indeed be considered a founding a sect." The 11 martial grandmasters in charge of the assessment passed Wang Sheng's assessment unanimously. Before Mei and Rosa could cheer, the martial grandmasters in charge of the assessment were pushed aside as soon as the results were announced. The people in charge of the assessment could no longer hold it in. Once the results were announced, they swarmed around the uncanny workmanship ball and observed it closely. Since the place was only that big, the martial grandmasters almost fought with each other. In the end, Old Qian was afraid that the uncanny workmanship ball would be damaged, so he put it away. Only then did everyone calm down. "Duke, this piece." Old Qian suddenly recalled that Wang Sheng had yet to tell Wang Sheng the name of his work. He hurriedly asked Wang Sheng, "Duke, what's the name of this thing?" "Uncanny workmanship ball." "How about it?" Wang Sheng did not think too much about it. He immediately used the name from Earth. "Uncanny workmanship ball." "Amazing." Old Qian nodded. "That's it. Uncanny workmanship ball." Those who heard this name all nodded their heads repeatedly. This was indeed a work of the gods. Duke's uncanny workmanship ball is exquisitely carved. Won't you ruin it if you all swarm around it? Old Qian reminded everyone with a smile. When everyone calmed down, he took out the uncanny workmanship ball and placed it on the table for everyone to admire. Old Qian's smile was so wide that it looked like a flower had bloomed on his face. The tool that Wang Sheng used to carve the uncanny workmanship ball was made by Old Qian and a few other martial grandmasters. Old Qian and the others had contributed a lot to Wang Sheng's founding work. Everyone lined up and carefully admired it one by one. Rosa, who was at the side, did not rush forward. After all, it belonged to her master. She would hold it in her arms when she got home. However, Rosa was very curious about how much Old Qian's uncanny workmanship ball was worth. "Old Qian, based on your judgment, how much do you think Duke's uncanny workmanship ball is worth?" Rosa asked Old Qian respectfully. It was the right time to ask Old Qian about the value of these exquisite pieces. His words were priceless, and he had never misjudged them. He was now the authority in pricing all of Mei Er's businesses. Duke's uncanny workmanship ball is exquisitely designed. It's a founding work, so it's really hard to judge its value. Old Qian was not modest as he answered directly. It's not an exaggeration to describe it as a priceless treasure. "What if you insist on a price?" Rosa asked. "The value of the craftsmanship is at least 2 million gold coins." Old Qian thought about it and gave a figure. "However, if you include the value of Duke's identity, I'm afraid that people will definitely want it even if it's 5 million gold coins." Chapter 1169. "Duke, do you agree with this old man's valuation?" Elder Qian asked Wang Sheng after judging. "Elder Qian's valuation of my value is more or less the same." Wang Sheng said with a smile, "My identity is still worth 3 million gold coins, right?" Mayor and Rosa certainly felt that this valuation was too low. The masterpiece made by the dignified Duke Chongsheng himself. Not to mention 3 million. Even if it was 30 million, Mayor would definitely buy it without hesitation. However, since Wang Sheng said it was more or less the same, then so be it. Anyway, in the hearts of Mayor and Rosa, how could something made by their master be sold for mere gold coins? "Duke, do you think that there's a problem with the previous valuation of my craftsmanship?" Elder Qian heard something else from Wang Sheng's words and asked Wang Sheng. "The valuation of the craftsmanship is about the same." Wang Sheng shook his head. "There is not much difference in this figure." "Then, Duke, do you think that there's a problem with the overall valuation?" Elder Qian didn't understand. Since the value of the craftsmanship was about the same, and the value of the net worth was also about the same, why did Wang Sheng say so? "Elder Qian, you calculated something." Wang Sheng smiled and said to old Taoist Qian, "What is it?" Elder Qian didn't understand and asked directly. Anyway, he knew that Wang Sheng would definitely not hide it and would definitely explain it clearly. Design. Wang Sheng didn't keep him guessing and answered straightforwardly. "Duke, are you referring to the idea of this concentric, ghostly craft ball?" Elder Qian pondered for a moment and said to Wang Sheng with some doubt, "Although this idea is indeed original and has the realm of founding a sect, these are already included in the value of the craftsmanship." Wang Sheng shook his head with a smile and looked at the concentric, ghostly craft ball. At this time, if Elder Qian still didn't understand that there were other hidden mysteries in this concentric ghost craft ball, then he wouldn't be Elder Qian. "What else are you hiding? Hurry up and tell me." Master Lu, who had been listening until now, could no longer hold it in and called out to Wang Sheng. Even the people who were watching were attracted by it. Was there a secret to this ball of the uncanny crafting ghosts? Everyone had been watching for so long. Why hadn't they discovered it yet? Wang Sheng smiled and pointed at the base. "There's also an array formation on the base. You can activate it." The array formation at the base was in the groove and could not be seen from the outside. There were array masters at the scene, but even if there were array fluctuations, everyone would take it for granted that it was an array on the ball and would not think of anything else. After all, the array formation on the ball was very obvious. Because of this, everyone subconsciously ignored the array formation on the base. After all, the base was too ordinary. It was just a base carved with ordinary methods. Now, it seemed that it wasn't that simple. The array master who failed to discover the array formation on the base felt embarrassed. He went forward and sensed it carefully before he sensed a very faint array fluctuation. The concentric ghost craft ball was very fragile to begin with, so there was not a powerful array formation on it. Since the array fluctuation was very weak, it was normal that they could not discover it. Since Wang Sheng pointed it out, the crowd no longer studied the array formation. Instead, the array master activated it. Without needing to move the needles, all the balls inside and outside the concentric ghost craft began to spin. Different balls spun at different speeds. They went from slow to fast until they reached the speed that Wang Sheng designed. Then, something magical happened. As the ball spun, the crowd clearly saw different changes in the images. Regular patterns appeared on the spinning concentric ghost craft. As the ball spun faster, the patterns became more complicated. Eventually, when they reached a certain level, they suddenly became simple. When the concentric ghost craft ball spun at the speed that Wang Sheng designed, the crowd could only see a white lotus flower blooming inside the ball. The lotus flower was neat and lifelike. The petals inside and outside could be seen clearly from every angle. "Wow!" the crowd exclaimed in admiration. Everyone stared unblinkingly at the white lotus flower that seemed to be sealed inside the white jade ball. Their faces were full of disbelief. For a long time, the crowd was so silent that not even the sound of breathing could be heard. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, afraid that they would blow the delicate white lotus away. "How beautiful!" Finally, Mei Er's exclamation broke the silence. Then the crowd heard the sound of everyone breathing in unison. This sound stunned everyone. Then they burst into laughter in unison. It turned out that everyone was the same. They had all been mesmerized by the exquisite design. They had even forgotten to breathe. They were all great grandmasters. After discovering such an exquisite design, not only did they not feel embarrassed, but they became even more interested. Some of the more impatient ones began to study why this was happening. When something spun, it would appear as a regular circular image. This was not surprising. What was amazing was that Wang Sheng had actually used this to set the 50 layers of balls on the inside and outside at different speeds. This allowed everyone to see a lifelike white lotus. This was where the skill lay. The array formation did not continue to input spirit energy. After spinning for about 10 minutes, the spinning speed began to slow down. Right in front of everyone's eyes, the white lotus slowly turned into a regular, complicated pattern. Then it became simple again. In the end, all the balls stopped. When it quieted down, all the balls were still in place, and the conical machined holes appeared in front of everyone again. Amazing! This time, old Qian did not say anything else. He gave Wang Sheng a thumbs up. No one, including old Qian, had thought that the uncanny ghost crafting ball could be played in this way, and it was done so beautifully. If they had not known that Wang Sheng was definitely not short of gold coins, and that mayor would never have let anyone buy such a beautiful and memorable thing, perhaps all the great grandmasters present would have wanted to buy this white jade uncanny ghost crafting white lotus ball. Everyone looked at this uncanny ghost crafting ball not with simple appreciation, but with a kind of obsession. If you wanted craftsmanship, this was second to none. If you wanted creativity, you had unconstrained creativity. If you wanted surprise, you had a unique surprise. Almost everything that every great grandmaster pursued in their lifetime was contained in this ball. Who wouldn't want such a good thing? It's mine. No one can snatch it from me. When Mayor saw that everyone's gazes were not right, she quickly rushed in front of everyone and blocked the white jade ball behind her. It was as if her favorite toy had been fancied by someone else. In an instant, she became a fierce beast protecting its food. Chapter 1170. Ha ha ha. The group of martial masters laughed out loud when they saw Mei Er's rare expression. Everyone only wanted to take a closer look at the uncanny white lotus ball and ponder over the theory and design within it. Who would have thought of taking it for themselves? Ever since they had the title of Martial Master, no Martial Master's advancement product had been forcefully taken by others. Previously, when Master Wu became a Martial Master, it was Wang Sheng who bought it from Master Wu for 1 million gold coins. Don't worry. What's yours is yours. Nobody can take it away from you. Master Lu smiled as he reassured Mei Er. His words made Mei Er a little embarrassed. Elder Qian, how high is the valuation of the Duke now? Mei Er rolled her eyes and threw the question back to Elder Qian. That was indeed my mistake. Elder Qian smiled bitterly and shook his head. I was blind and made a mistake. That was the Duke's intention. He didn't say anything. You don't have to take it to heart. Mayor beamed immediately. He was obviously praising the Duke's craftsmanship and skills. Mayor did not mind saying bad things about Wang Sheng first to make Elder Qian happy and give a more accurate valuation. I'm ashamed. Elder Qian still shook his head. When he turned to look at Wang Sheng, his face was filled with admiration. The Duke's design is brilliant. We're ashamed of ourselves. Now that this white lotus is added, how high is the ball's valuation? Mayor asked before Wang Sheng and Elder Qian could be polite. Rosa was also listening attentively. She wanted to know the exact figure. This white lotus is worth another 5 million gold coins, Elder Qian said in admiration. Elder Qian exclaimed in admiration. The Duke clearly didn't carve anything else, but after adding such a rotating array, it's immediately reborn. It's simply ingenious. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. With another 5 million gold coins, the value of the uncanny white lotus ball shot up to 10 million gold coins. Even without Wang Sheng's status, it was still worth 7 million gold coins. Qian Xingyuan had never produced an item that was more valuable than this. Only a phoenix coronet with a large amount of precious gemstones from the Dream Workshop had barely exceeded this price. However, the phoenix crown alone was worth more than 7 million gold coins, and Wang Sheng's concentric ball didn't include the price of the materials at all, but only the craftsmanship and design. Of course, compared to this price, the original value of the white jade ball was actually negligible. The group of martial grandmasters studied and admired it for more than half a day before they were finally satisfied. Mayor had already ordered people to prepare food and wine for the judges and the great grandmasters to enjoy. If that's the case, Wang Sheng's meticulous carving assessment today. Master Lu officially announced on behalf of all the judges, he passes. Yay! Mayor and Rosa immediately cheered. It was as if they were happier that Wang Sheng had advanced to become a great grandmaster than if they had advanced themselves. The old Taoist did not say anything, but he kept nodding as he sat there, which explained his feelings. In addition, this time, it was old Qian who answered with a smile. After everyone quieted down, he continued to announce, After the unanimous agreement of close to 200 great grandmasters of our Linglong Pavilion, Wang Sheng will be conferred the title of Grandmaster of Fine Design. The Pavilion of Delicacy had long wanted to grant the title of a great grandmaster to Wang Sheng, but they had not been able to find a suitable opportunity to do so previously. It was rather baffling to grant the title of a great grandmaster for no reason. They took advantage of Wang Sheng's breakthrough to become a meticulous design great grandmaster to grant the title of a meticulous design great grandmaster to Wang Sheng. Nobody was dissatisfied with the title of a meticulous design great grandmaster. Whether it was the great grandmasters of the Pavilion of Delicacy or the shopkeepers of the big shops, they all admired Wang Sheng from the bottom of their hearts. If Wang Sheng was not a great grandmaster, then the great grandmasters of the Pavilion of Delicacy would not live up to their name. One advancement test, 2 great grandmaster titles. Everyone was happy. Everyone present drank to their heart's content to celebrate Wang Sheng's breakthrough to great grandmaster. Because of this, the great grandmasters in Wang Sheng's residence all stopped work for a day. It was unknown how many people who were waiting for orders had their deliveries delayed for a day. The emperor's side finally received the news. No one was surprised that Wang Sheng had advanced to a great grandmaster. Even when they heard the news, they felt that it was reasonable for 2 great grandmasters to advance at the same time. However, the emperor and the empress had a strong interest in Wang Sheng's advancement work, the white jade lotus ball. 50 layers, 1 heart carving, the inner ball inside the outer ball, the sculpting technique from the outside to the inside. Moreover, when it rotated, it would produce the visual effect of the white lotus due to the different rotational speed. Any one of the characteristics made people itch to take a look. Old Zhou, go to Changshan Duke's residence and bring it back for me to take a look. The empress was also very interested and curious. The emperor simply ordered Steward Zhou to bring it back for a closer look. Steward Zhou didn't dare to neglect and directly went to Changshan Duke's residence. He didn't directly alarm Wang Sheng and Mei Er. He waited until Changshan Duke's residence's celebration was over before he met Wang Sheng and expressed the emperor's intention. Wang Sheng, of course, didn't care. If the emperor wanted to see it, then let him see it. If he really liked it, then there was no harm in giving it to him. Just treat it as a gift for his mother-in-law and father-in-law. Mei Er was quite unwilling, but after hearing Wang Sheng's intention, her heart was unusually sweet. Something worth tens of millions of gold coins, and it was sculpted by Wang Sheng himself, just to make Mei Er's parents and Mei Er happy. He said to give it away without hesitation. How could Mei Er not be happy and excited? That won't do. I can't give it to them easily. Mei Er gently wrapped herself around Wang Sheng's body. I still want to keep it. I won't give it to them. I'll sell it to them. Oomph. Narrow-minded girl. Wang Sheng smiled. I'll sculpt another one for you. It's more exquisite. The first one was an experiment. It didn't completely include all my ideas. Wait for me to make a better one for you. Wang Sheng's promise finally made Mei Er happy again. She also promised to give the thing to the emperor and the empress. Old Zhou, this is my gift to the empress. Don't let the emperor take it. Mei Er told old Zhou, who was taking the thing. Steward Zhou nodded hurriedly. The empress would definitely be overjoyed if she knew this news. Just as the capital was filled with a joyous atmosphere, in a certain wilderness in Xia country, Qi was like a soulless, lonely ghost. He staggered through the night in a daze, his face filled with despair. It was as if he had completely lost all signs of life. Chapter 1171. Ever since Aki got the news about her brother, she couldn't wait to go to Xia. Back then, Wang Sheng had also supported her in finding her younger brother, so Qi didn't have any worries and could focus on reuniting with her family. However, Aki used to be a death warrior of Xia, and now she worked for Wang Sheng. Her words in Xia were not as effective as those of Wang Sheng. With her status, it was not enough for her to get in touch with a leading expert of the younger generation in Xia. Of course, Aki couldn't give up on finding her brother. Therefore, she could only use other indirect methods to achieve her goal. Fortunately, Aki had the huge financial support of Wang Sheng. Although it was only 1,000,000 gold coins, it was enough for her. It was enough for Aki to promise great benefits and bribe the people in Xia to get in touch with her brother slowly. At first, Aki had to observe him closely to make sure that it was her brother. Carefully approaching, Achi carefully observed him for 2 whole months. From his appearance to his background, it was clear that the young expert of the Xia kingdom, Xia Tianzong, was Achi's younger brother. He was his biological younger brother, who had been adopted by the Xia family and separated from them. After confirming this, Aki almost cried tears of joy. After so many years of persistence, she finally got the best result. Not only was her brother alive, but he was also an expert with a bright future. At that time, Aki almost wanted to show up in front of Xia Tianzong directly. Unfortunately, her status was destined to be different from Xia Tianzong's. Not to mention approaching Xia Tianzong directly, she would be rejected by Xia Tianzong's guards outside the gate. When Aki tried her best to bribe the experts of Xia, she finally arranged a chance for Aki to meet Xia Tianzong by chance, so that Aki could have a short time to talk to Xia Tianzong. Aki waited for the opportunity uneasily. She didn't know what to say when she saw Xia Tianzong. Worrying about personal gains and losses was the true portrayal of Aki at that time. "Little brother, I'm your big sister." Aki shook her head. "No, it was too direct. It wasn't appropriate." "Tianzong, I'm your long-lost sister. Do you remember me?" Aki shook her head again. "No, it was too sudden." Aki thought a lot and thought about a lot of things she wanted to say. She had a lot of things she wanted to say, but Aki felt that every word was inappropriate. Even when the opportunity came, she still hadn't thought of what to say. However, when they met at the small wine shop that they had arranged beforehand, Aki realized that she no longer needed to say anything because Xia Zong had spoken first. "You're the one who's been investigating me recently, aren't you?" Aki's arrangement was very clever. It was just the two of them, and there were no outsiders. However, as soon as they met, Xia Tianzong asked Aki directly. At this moment, Xia Zong's cultivation was in the middle stage of the legendary realm. At his age, he was an expert in the 9th stage, so he could definitely be called the hope of the Xia family. Xia Zong was not worried about his own safety at all when he, a legendary expert, met a mediocre person in the 6th stage. "How dare you?" Xia Zong stared at Aki expressionlessly, with unspeakable disgust. "Do you really think that I didn't notice that you bribed my guards? All the information you know was given to you under my instructions." "Tianzong, you..." Aki didn't expect Xia Zong to speak like this. She couldn't help but call out, "You don't have the right to call me Tianzong." Xia Zong replied coldly, "I'm a direct descendant of the head of the Xia family, and you're just an insignificant warrior of the Xia family. Throw away your unrealistic fantasies." Aki was stunned. Xia Zong seemed to know everything. But why did he have such an attitude? "I told you that all the information you want to know was given out under my instructions." Xia Zong looked at Aki without the slightest expression in his eyes, as if he was facing a stranger. In fact, he was facing a stranger without any feelings. "Since you've worked for the Xia family and made contributions, I don't mind giving you some psychological comfort." Xia Zong's words were like sharp knives, stabbing into Aki's heart. "But that's all. Don't think that you can take a mile when you're given an inch. Don't think that you can have any ulterior motives. You're just a servant without a surname. Since you're with someone now, you should obediently serve the master." Xia Zong's expression was still cold and unfamiliar. "You're just a gift, an object that people like. Don't think that you're someone important." In Achi's mind, a clap of thunder rang out. He already had no idea why he was still standing on the spot and not lying limply on the ground. "For the sake of the person behind you, I won't pursue all the conspiracies you've plotted against me." Xia Zong's eyes finally lit up, but it was obviously not happiness. Instead, it was a warning. "Just this once. Don't do it again. If you dare to cause trouble in Xia again, I'll kill you myself. I'll take your head to Duke Changsheng and ask him if this is what he wants." After saying this, Xia Zong turned around and left without mercy, leaving Aki with a resolute back. Aki almost collapsed. She had worked so hard for so long, finally finding out about her brother, finally finding his whereabouts, and then arranging this meeting opportunity. In the end, Xiaozong had easily shattered her thoughts, shattered her soul, and shattered her everything with just a few words. It could be said that for a long time, Aki had lived on the fact that she had a brother to take care of. For this, she could be a death warrior for the Xia family. She could die at any time. She could even endure being given as a gift by the Xia family to Wang Sheng. However, she couldn't bear the fact that everything she had done was nothing in her brother's eyes. Xiaozong even told her not to have unrealistic fantasies. If it was because of her perseverance that she could still stand where she was, then Xiaozong's last sentence was that he would personally kill Aki and shatter all of Aki's fantasies. When Xiaozong turned around and left, Aki directly collapsed on the ground. Her mind was blank and there was nothing left. After a long time, Aki seemed to come back to her senses and finally had that feeling of despair. It was as if the spirit that had supported Aki to live until now no longer existed. Inside Aki's body, there was only an empty shell. Even her soul had floated to an unknown place. Aki didn't even know how she left the tavern. There was no direction in front of her. She just walked randomly to the emptiest place like a puppet that had lost its soul. Chapter 1172. On a spacious plain in Xia country, a woman was walking forward in a daze. Aki did not know where she was going. She only knew to walk aimlessly, and she did not even know why she was walking. At that moment, it was as if moving her legs had become an instinct. Even without Aki's brain controlling it, Aki could still move her legs numbly. There was a forest in front of her. Aki seemed to instinctively like the darkness in the forest, and she could not help but walk into the forest. Hey, there's a beauty. There were a few cultivators resting in the forest. When one of them saw Aki stumbling into the forest, he could not help but nudge his companion's shoulder, gesturing for him to look in Aki's direction. Xia country was currently in troubled times. The upper echelons were being attacked by countless mysterious assassins, and the entire country seemed to have become a hunting ground. Various parties had sent people into Xia country to cause trouble. Almost every city had assassins and experts from all sides. Apart from these experts who specialized in causing trouble, there were also many people who specialized in taking advantage of the chaos in war-torn areas. They wanted to take advantage of the chaos to make a fortune. These experts who caused trouble in Xia country were a mix of good and bad people, and they did all kinds of things. The group of people who saw Aki were like a pack of hyena-like hunters. As long as someone was alone and worth killing, these people would not let them go easily. Aki was very beautiful. She had a slender figure and long, taut legs. This was what Wang Sheng had always liked. Moreover, what Achi was currently wearing was Alice's battle uniform. Not only was it of high quality, it also made Achi's figure look exceptionally exquisite and translucent. Which professional hunter wouldn't know the price of a female combat uniform in Dream Workshop? The set that Aki was wearing could not be bought for less than 200,000 gold coins. Even if it was a second-hand one, 100,000 gold coins was more than enough. Other than that, there was Aki herself, who was beautiful and had a good figure. Staying in this war-torn country to look for opportunities, these hunters did not dare to easily go to the city to vent their anger. They had been holding back for many days. A beauty that could even tempt Wang Sheng was delivered to these hunters just like that. Moreover, she seemed to have lost her wits and was completely defenseless. What a delicacy that was delivered to their doorstep. She was wearing a combat suit that was worth 200,000 gold coins, and she probably had a storage ring that was also very valuable. Coupled with Aki's beauty, it was enough to tempt the 5 hunters. The 5 of them stared at the dazed Aki as she wandered aimlessly into the jungle, dodging the vines and trunks in the jungle like a puppet being controlled. Everyone's surprised gazes converged together. A fat sheep and a beautiful woman had actually become one. Was there anything better than this? Troublesome, at least in the 6th stage. Very experienced in the forest. The 5 of them were quietly exchanging information, but none of them retreated. All of them followed behind them stealthily. Such a good prey, it would be the wrath of the heavens to lose it. She was stimulated, Maybe her relatives were killed or something like that. An experienced tall man whispered. In this situation, either she explodes in battle or she has no strength to fight back. Do we do it or not? After following Achi for a few miles, Achi was still in a daze. The few of them finally ran out of patience. Do it. Among the 5 of them, there were 2 experts in the 7th stage. Under such circumstances, dealing with a woman in the 6th stage was not a problem. The leader of the team finally made a decision. Following the leader's gesture, the 5 of them spread out and surrounded Aki from several directions. Aki was a death warrior and a killer at the same time. Moreover, among the killers of the same level, Aki could definitely be regarded as an outstanding killer. Even in such a state, Aki still felt that something was wrong. Aki, who was walking in a daze, suddenly stopped and a dagger appeared in her hand. In such a situation, if the 5 hunters still did not know that Aki had discovered them, then they were really stupid. But so what? In the forest, Aki was alone and surrounded by 5 people. 2 of them were in a higher realm than Aki, and the other 3 were in the 5th stage, and 1 was in the 4th stage. How could there be a problem with numbers? Do it, the leader of the team shouted. He had no choice but to do it. As soon as the voice came out, Aki's figure suddenly moved forward and quickly changed direction, disappearing into the forest. An excellent killer, in the face of life and death, still had the instinct to fight. As soon as the 5 hunters appeared, Aki instantly judged the weakest one and directly turned towards the direction of the 4th stage hunter. What a tough nut to crack. The leader of the team sighed, and together with the other 7th stage hunter, they quickly chased after her. Chi, the 4th stage hunter's neck spurted out blood, and his face was full of disbelief as he softly fell down. This stimulated woman actually burst out her fighting power and cut his carotid artery in just one move. The 2 7th stage hunters had already noticed that after Aki killed one of their companions, her movements seemed to be a little slower. It could be foreseen that the burst out of the killer move had obviously consumed a lot of Aki's energy. Aki had already pounced on another 5th stage hunter. The 2 5th stage hunters were originally in the same direction and facing Aki. The 2 of them tacitly attacked Aki. Puff! Aki's dagger directly pierced into the shoulder of a 5th stage hunter. What he didn't expect was that the opponent was abnormally strong. He used his muscles and bones to clamp down on Achi's dagger. Achi tried to pull out twice, but was unable to do so. Another 5th realm hunter was already attacking him. He had no choice but to give up on the dagger. As he dodged, he kicked the guy's temple. Bang bang. The 2 hunters punched heavily on Aki's body, and Aki's kick landed heavily on the right spot. A short dagger popped out from the tip of her shoe and left the hunter's temple with a smear of blood. Her long legs nimbly turned in the air, and her body directly jumped over the head of the hunter, who was clamping the dagger on her shoulder. Bang! A kick landed on the back of the hunter's neck, bringing up another cloud of blood. After dealing with 3 hunters in a row, Aki only felt a wave of emptiness in her body. As soon as her feet touched the ground, her legs softened and she directly knelt on the ground. At this time, the 2 7th stage hunters had already found the opportunity and attacked Aki from both sides. The 3 companions attracted all of Aki's attention and also exhausted all of Aki's energy. Aki, on the other hand, had perfectly dealt with the 3 companions who were in the way. Not to mention that there were 3 less people to split the money. This beautiful woman should be enjoyed by 2 people rather than 5, right? Chapter 1173. Looking at the 2 figures pouncing on her, Aki did not feel any fear of death. Since the moment Xia Tianzong rejected her, Aki was actually a dead person. The death of the body was not scary. The death of the heart was scary. Perhaps it was better to die now. Aki raised her head slightly, so that her neck could be aimed at the weapon of one of the guys. The 2 hunters had seen this scene a few times before when a little beauty was offering her neck to the knife on her own initiative. Basically, when there was no other way, they would take the initiative to die to avoid being humiliated. Now, this little beauty must be thinking the same way. Could they let her succeed? Two experts of the seventh degree realm, facing an exhausted beauty. If she really died, wouldn't it be boring? The two of them put away their weapons and stopped not far from Aki with a lascivious smile. Seeing this situation, Aki took out a hairpin from her storage ring and was about to give it to herself. Even if she died, she would not let these two disgusting guys sully her. If she had known earlier, she would have given herself to Wang Sheng when she was with Wang Sheng. How could the two of them tolerate such a thing? How could they let go of the fat meat that was already in their mouths? Bang! A gold coin popped out from one of the hands, hitting Aki's wrist that was holding the hairpin. Crack! A clear sound of bone breaking came from Aki's wrist. Aki could no longer hold on to the hairpin, and with a clang, the hairpin fell to the ground. Little beauty, it's better to live than to die a good death. Even if you die, it's not too late to die after us brothers have enjoyed you. The leader of the hunters said with a lascivious smile, taking 2 steps forward. At this time, Aki, who seemed to have no way out, suddenly showed a trace of a mocking smile on her face. That smile seemed to be mocking the hunters in front of her, and also seemed to be mocking herself. Crack! There was another sound of bones breaking, but this time it came from the direction of another hunter. Because he had taken a few steps forward, the leader of the hunters couldn't see what was going on. However, it couldn't be that his comrade had accidentally injured him, right? His 7th-stage realm companion didn't have any interest in torturing corpses, so what was with the sound of bones shattering? Combined with the mocking smile on Aki's face, if the leader still didn't know that something had happened at this time, then he wouldn't have been able to live until now in Xia country. Turning around abruptly, the leader assumed a defensive posture so that he could take care of both Aki and his companions. When he glanced at his companions, he saw a scene of despair. His 7th-stage realm companion had already turned into a soft corpse. Next to the corpse stood a black-clothed man whose eyes were spitting fire. He was wearing a high-grade protective suit, and his face was covered with a black mask. He looked mysterious. When did this person come? To his horror, the leader realized that he didn't notice anything amiss. Whether it was his breathing, heartbeat, or movement, there was nothing. Until now, the black-clothed man was standing not far from him, but the leader couldn't feel his presence other than his sight. Such a terrifying enemy. His cultivation was definitely far beyond the 7th-stage realm, at least in the legendary realm. Why would such an expert follow behind him and kill his comrade without a sound? Damn it! A careless mistake, and you bastards dared to hurt my employer. The black-clothed man was unusually unhappy and said to the leader fiercely, "Employer?" The leader immediately understood that this was the bodyguard of this beauty. Yes, if not, how could a beauty dressed like this run around so easily? Why were they so stupid? Did they think that this was a fat sheep that they could humiliate at will? It's a misunderstanding. The leader immediately felt the murderous intent of the other party and shouted loudly, "Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, reunite with your comrade." The black-clothed man didn't give the leader a chance and rushed forward. The leader was considered a very experienced expert. He knew that it was impossible to escape at this time. In order to survive, he used all his strength to attack the other party. Every move was a method to perish together. Since the other party was protecting Aki, he definitely wouldn't be willing to perish together with the leader. Even if the leader died, he might not be willing to be injured. As for capturing Aki immediately and forcing the other party to let go, that was simply impossible. Anytime he turned his back to this terrifying black-clothed man, it would be a disaster for him. On the contrary, if he could fight for a chance to escape from the hands of the black-clothed man, the black-clothed man might care about the injury of the lady and not pursue him to the end. This way, he could really escape. Sure enough, the leader's guess was right. The black-clothed man indeed didn't want to perish together with him. Similarly, he also didn't want to exchange his life for injury. Because of his correct judgment, the leader finally got a chance to live. With 2 big wounds on his shoulder and arm, the leader finally got out of the black-clothed man's encirclement. As long as he could run 10 meters forward, he would have a chance to escape in the forest. However, this little bit of extravagant hope had completely turned into bubbles because the leader of the hunters had missed out on one person. Aki was injured, in despair, and her heart was dead. However, she was still an excellent assassin and a man of sacrifice. What a man of sacrifice was best at was making a counterattack before his death, bringing a target that was much stronger than him to death. At this moment, Aki wasn't in despair yet. Her right wrist was injured, but Aki still had her left hand. The dagger was caught between the dead man's shoulder and flesh, so she couldn't retrieve it. However, Aki had a hairpin by her side, which was more than enough for a killer like Aki. The hairpin was no longer by Aki's side, but it was on the leader's thigh. Even with her left hand, Aki was accurate enough. She accurately threw the hairpin like a dart, and it stabbed into the leader's thigh. The sudden pain didn't affect the leader's will to escape, but it affected his movement and speed. For the black-clothed man, it was enough. Crack! The last sound that the leader heard was the sound of his neck bone breaking, and then the world became dark forever. After killing the leader, the black-clothed man turned around and shook his head at Aki, who was sitting on the ground. He didn't say anything, but just walked over. When he was about to help Aki treat her injured wrist, he was stopped by Aki. The black-clothed man didn't say anything. He put down some bandages and walked to the side slowly. He asked you to protect me secretly, didn't he? Aki's eyes finally lit up, and she suddenly asked the black-clothed man. Chapter 1174. There are not many people who can hire me. The man in black did not answer her directly, but said proudly, as a red card killer in Carefree City, unless the city lord gave the order or paid a great price, no one could hire a red card killer to protect others. How easy was it to kill? He would earn a lot too. Why did he have to be a bodyguard that had to be on guard every day? The price of hiring a red card killer as a bodyguard was at least twice the price of killing someone. Moreover, this was a friendship price, which depended on many factors. For example, identity, friendship, etc. As an excellent killer, Aki had been busy in Xia country for more than 2 months, but she still did not find any trace of the man in black. It could only be said that the man in black's skills and various camouflage skills were far better than Aki's, which was why she could not find him at all. In fact, the answer was already on the verge of being revealed. There were not many people who could hire the man in black, but Wang Sheng was definitely one of them. Among the people who had such a great relationship with Aki, only Wang Sheng could do this. Just when Aki was at the extreme of despair and even took the initiative to meet the hunter's weapon, the man in black appeared out of nowhere and saved Aki. Even if Aki did not feel anything, she could not help but feel a warmth in her heart when she suddenly realized that there was someone behind her who was still silently supporting her. In the icy cold world, there was suddenly such an irresistible warmth. Achi's heart, which had already been covered in ice, finally had a warm support. Just now, Aki really wanted to die. When she resolutely wanted to stab the hairpin in her throat, Aki had already regarded herself as a dead person. Now Aki was still alive, but she was already a person who had died once. After dying once, one would see the world in a new light. Although Aki did not have many years in her life, she had been struggling to survive in the first 10 years. She killed here and there, was hunted down, and tried her best to survive. The last few months were spent in anxiety and expectation. The really peaceful period where she could fall asleep was after she was given as a gift to Wang Sheng. Even though Wang Sheng was her enemy before, Wang Sheng did not kill her to vent his anger. After that, Achi slowly got used to the fact that he did not have to be assigned to various difficult missions as a death soldier. All he had to do was serve Wang Sheng with peace of mind. But in fact, Aki did not do a good job. So far, she had not handed herself over to Wang Sheng. The pain in her wrist pulled Aki's mind back to reality. The hunter's cultivation was good. When Aki was too tired to fight, a gold coin almost broke Aki's wrist. Enduring the pain, Aki slowly wrapped her injured wrist with a bandage left by the man in black. Although the gold coin was powerful, it did not really break Aki's wrist. It only broke the bone. The man in black left a fixed bone plate for Aki. Aki did not need his help and fixed everything by herself. When Aki was bandaged, the man in black kept looking at her coldly and did not speak. Since he had shown himself, he did not need to hide anymore, which was more convenient. Let's go. Sitting on the ground and eating something, Aki recovered some strength. After a short cultivation, she finally regained the ability to move. Where to? The man in black finally said, "Let me say this first. I'm only responsible for helping you solve problems when you do not take the initiative to provoke others. If you take the initiative to cause trouble, it is not within the scope of my protection. I will not be stupid again." Aki's current state was obviously much better than that of the humanoid puppet who had lost its soul. At least she had regained her sanity. "Smart choice," the black-clothed man praised, and then returned to his silent state. Xiaozong had made Aki completely despair. Obviously, he knew about the existence of Aki, but he completely denied it. Of course, perhaps he did not know whether he was Aki's biological younger brother, because for as long as he could remember, he had been a member of the Xia family. He had parents and a family. So how could he have a sister who did not know anything? Even if he knew about the relationship between him and Aki, as he had said to Aki, he was now the direct descendant of the head of the Xia family. He was also an extremely talented cultivation genius, and a large family had devoted all of their resources to nurture him. Aki was an obviously abandoned death warrior, a gift given to someone else. What right did she have to climb up to him? It was a choice so realistic that it made people despair, but it was not surprising. In this world, if the descendants of the large families had the chance to choose between these two, 90 out of 100 would probably do the same. On one side was a bright future, and on the other was a stranger who had no contact with him since he could remember, suddenly claiming to be his sister. Moreover, this stranger had no value to him. Was it difficult to choose? So what if Aki was Wang Sheng's woman? Just by looking at how Aki had been thrown in Carefree City, it was obvious that she was not favored by Wang Sheng. Although he did not know the specific inside story, if it was Xiaozong, would he dote on a female killer who had tried to assassinate him several times? She was nothing more than a plaything that he might not even remember when he died. Was it important? Which way back to Carefree City? Aki stood up, looked around, and took back her belongings from the corpses. As for the others, they were the spoils of war of the man in black. Aki was very clear about this rule. After waiting for the man in black to search all the corpses, Aki asked the man in black. The man in black did not speak, but pointed in a direction. Achi didn't want to say anything else. She walked in that direction. The black-clothed man followed behind her at a moderate distance. He was a qualified guard. Aki had already made up her mind. Xiaozong had already given up all hope, so there was only one reason for Aki to live on, and that was to repay Wang Sheng's deep friendship. At the very least, she had to give herself to Wang Sheng, and then die for Wang Sheng. At that time, Achi could really die in peace and not have to worry about anything anymore. With Aki's current condition, it took her 2 whole months to reach Carefree City from Xia Country. The man in black was very patient and did not rush her along the way. Both of them were very experienced in the jungle, and as long as Aki did not purposely think about it, she did not have to worry about her safety even in the grounds of Thousand Despair. Along the way, they returned to Carefree City without any mishaps. The black-robed man finally opened his mouth again when he arrived at the city gate of the Worry-Free City. "After escorting you back to Carefree City, my escort mission this time will be considered complete. I'll give you a word for free." The man in black caught up with Aki, and with a warning tone, he advised, "There are many people in Carefree City who are more miserable than you, but everyone is still trying their best to live. Remember, living is everything." Chapter 1175. Wang Sheng didn't know what had happened to Aki. Not to mention Aki, Wang Sheng didn't even know what was happening outside the capital. Wang Sheng had been concentrating on carving for more than 2 months, completely ignoring what was happening outside. Now, if Wang Sheng wanted to know what was happening outside, he had to rely on Meyer and Rosa to explain it to him. It was no longer news that the vassal states were fighting. There was a small vassal state among them that Wang Sheng didn't even have an impression of. It was probably a vassal state that was granted by a small sect. It was next to the Chiu state and bordered the Dai state. He didn't know how it offended the Tang state, the Dai state, and the Chiu state, and it was actually destroyed by the three parties. The destruction of a small vassal state wasn't a big deal. However, it was actually the Dai state, the Tang state, and the Chiu state who had joined forces to destroy it. The Dai state was the mastermind behind the Shangyue state. In just a few months, the old Taoist and Wang Sheng killed the king and great elder. After the new king was replaced, the Dai state was immediately accepted by the Tang state and the Chiu state. The Chiu state had been badly damaged by the Shangyue state. How could they just forget about the enmity with a smile? It's said that the Dai state paid a great price. Rosa added a lot of people died. After destroying that small vassal state, the Dai state only took some spoils of war. The territory and population were all given to the Tang state and the Chiu state. That was right. Only interests, naked interests, could make the two countries that were hostile to each other stand in the same trench again. The Dai state should be trying hard to make a good impression on them. Otherwise, the Tang state, the Chiu state, and the Xia state would immediately counterattack after destroying the Shangyue state, and the Dai state would be in serious trouble. The reason why they spent so much effort to destroy a vassal state and gave a lot of benefits to the Tang state and the Chiu state was to appease the two countries. As long as they could talk about it on the surface, the private revenge of the children could be ignored. It seems like the situation in China is not good, Wang Sheng said with a smile. The Xia kingdom was the one that suffered the most from the Shangyue kingdom, but the Dai kingdom did not compensate for this. There were only a few possibilities. Either that, or the Xia kingdom had suffered a great loss in strength and was unlikely to pose a threat to the Dai kingdom. Either it was because the Shangyue kingdom had killed too many people from the Xia kingdom, and the hatred between them was too deep. There was no way for them to reconcile. Either that, or it was a combination of both. Relatively speaking, Xia is indeed the most miserable. Mayor said with a smile, "We haven't even taken back the 4 cities that were occupied by the Shangyue kingdom, let alone enter the Shangyue land to fight for territory." Wang Sheng killed Zhu Xingxing with a thunderous blow, but the top experts of Shangyue state he brought were still concentrated in Ningyue city and the 4 surrounding cities. This was a true elite expert. With the strength of Xia country alone, it was already not bad that they could maintain the current situation without winning or losing. As for entering the Yu Mountains to divide the territory, Xia probably wouldn't have much of a chance. Even if they wanted to, the other countries wouldn't give them such a chance. What about Shi Guo from the Gan Kingdom? Wang Sheng asked again. These two had obtained peerless treasures. How could they not become the target of other countries? It's also very messy. Mayor summarized the current situation of the two countries in one sentence. Being harassed day and night by fowls and dogs, it's really annoying. As for the Song Kingdom and Feng Kingdom, Wang Sheng didn't ask. The Song Kingdom was powerful. As long as Song Yin didn't make any mistakes, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. Feng Kingdom's presence was too low. At this time, he would definitely enter the Shangyue land to snatch the benefits. The other countries could really keep their composure. He had stayed in the capital for a few months without moving, but they were actually not in a hurry to urge him to enter the core of the land of Thousand Despair. It seemed that they were planning to divide the cake before dividing the secrets of the core of the land of Thousand Despair. This was also good. He wouldn't be harassed. They could make a fuss on their own. Wang Sheng smiled at Mayor. The more they make a fuss, the better your business will be. How many people have been relocated and how many teams have been formed? Mayor immediately perked up at the mention of her real estate business. She was born to be a genius in business. After being enlightened by Wang Sheng, she seemed to have been enlightened. When she talked about business, she was exuberant and didn't seem to pause at all. A few thousand households have been relocated, Mayor reported to Wang Sheng excitedly. A large piece of land has been cleared out and is currently being renovated. According to Master's instructions, new houses have been built for them outside the city. Those who moved out will be compensated with gold coins. No one objected. When Wang Sheng was on Earth, he had heard of all kinds of strange things during demolition. Could it be that in this world, and in the capital, it was actually so peaceful? Objected? Who objected? Mayor sneered. I hired a few hundred assassins from Carefree City to persuade them to relocate. I offer them gold coins and new houses. Everyone was very reasonable. Furthermore, the gold coins I gave them were the current market price. They didn't suffer any losses and even got new houses for free. Furthermore, they even got a chance to work. Who objected? Wang Sheng rolled his eyes. To think that she could think of asking a bunch of assassins from Carefree City to be in charge of demolition. It would be strange if the ordinary citizens of the capital dared to object. Those fellows were really assassins who had killed before. Who would reason with assassins when they had nothing better to do? Aren't you afraid of ruining your reputation? Wang Sheng knew that Mayor must have considered everything carefully, but he still couldn't help but remind her. Why would I have a bad reputation? Mayor said with a serious expression. I used the best materials to build a new house outside the city. I even followed your instructions and considered all the shops. Even the toilets and the main road were built to a point where no one could complain. As long as they moved there, they wouldn't have to worry about anything. They would even have an extra sum of gold coins in their hands. Now, who doesn't give my Lijian Lane a thumbs up when they talk about it? Lijian Lane was the name of Mei Er's new real estate and bank. It was named after the last two words of Wang Sheng's Hung Lijian, which meant great fortune. There must be people who aren't willing to leave the city, right? Wang Sheng was speechless for a moment and could only mention it again. That will depend on your idea, master. Once the city walls are torn down, how would there be a city outside the city? Rosa laughed at the side. Also, it is all thanks to the big shots from the vassal states. They are tyrannical in the inner city, and those who dare to refuse to sell have been tormented by them. Compared to our conditions, it is like heaven and earth. The bad reputation is theirs, but the good reputation is ours. In any case, when we bought their houses, we said that it was for those man-made courtyards. Quietly discrediting her opponents and elevating herself was indeed Mayor's style. Wang Sheng gave her a thumbs up in his heart. By building houses outside the city, we have trained a team of about 6,000 people. Mayor continued to smile as she replied. In less than 2 months, the first batch of new houses in the city will be ready to be sold. Chapter 1176. Don't stop building houses outside the city. Don't stop buying houses and land in the city either. Wang Sheng exhorted, while there are still people with a bad reputation, try to buy all the land in the city. If you don't have enough gold coins, tell me. I'll discuss it with Pavilion Master Ling Long. Yes, Master. Rosa and Mei agreed in unison. This was Wang Sheng's serious order, so they had to listen to it. When the houses in the city are sold, the price will be different. Who knows when someone will have crooked ideas? Wang Sheng knew that demolition was not easy, so he reminded the two women, once the houses and land are bought, demolish them immediately. Keep the ones that can be used and get rid of the ones that can't be used. Don't give people an opportunity. Wang Sheng didn't say what opportunity, but Mayor and Rosa could imagine it. Since ancient times, money could move people's hearts. After seeing the price of the houses in the city, there might be people who would feel dissatisfied or want to cause trouble. It was hard to guarantee that no one would take the opportunity to cause trouble. Don't worry, when the time comes, the 8 feudal vassals will be responsible for maintaining the order and safety of the outer city. Mayor said with a smile, I believe they will be happy to help us solve these problems for the sake of the gold coins. Wang Sheng nodded. Mayor was thoughtful, so everything was easy to discuss. As for the people in the capital, it was not something that Wang Sheng had to consider. From the beginning, Wang Sheng's goal was very clear. He came to this world to find the girl of his dreams, not to liberate the toiling people. It's still the same. Regardless of whether it's in the city or outside the city, make the house sturdy. Use real materials and don't try to deceive them. Wang Sheng was more at ease with Mayor and Rose. In business, you have to be honest with the old and the young. Yes, master. The two women replied charmingly. Mayor, Rosa, what flowers do you like? Wang Sheng looked at the two beautiful faces that were like two beautiful flowers blooming beside him. One was youthful and seductive, while the other was mature and charming. It was an indescribable comfort. He could not help but ask, "I'll make a set of concentric balls for each of you, using the flowers you like." The two women's eyes immediately lit up with joy. The white jade lotus ball that his old master had personally carved was something that the appraiser Grandmaster Qian had personally said was worth tens of millions of gold coins. Given Wang Sheng's status, who would be able to get him to personally carve it in the future? "I like peony." Mei Er's eyes immediately sparkled as she quickly replied. After saying that, he didn't forget to push Rosa away, asking her to speak quickly. I. Rosa seemed to be so surprised that she couldn't speak for a moment. "Since your name is Rosa, how about I carve a Rosa for you?" Wang Sheng didn't wait for Rosa to speak and took the initiative to ask. This time, Rosa didn't say anything and immediately nodded her head. Of course she was willing. Her name was Rosa, and Wang Sheng carved a Rosa for her. Was there a need to say this kind intention? The two women were happy for a long time before they recovered from the joy. Wang Sheng couldn't help but ask about the clock again. The clock had been in the business for a long time, and it was obviously Qian Shengyuan's business. It was something before the agreement was reached with the various countries, so it wasn't counted as a business that couldn't be operated. Mei Er was a smart person, so she wouldn't leave behind such a big weakness. That's really good. When it came to business again, Mei Er immediately entered her smart state. There are already dozens of them that can accurately keep time. I'll find an opportunity to take them out, and they will definitely shock the world. You can handle it. When it came to business, Wang Sheng had absolute trust in Mei Er. If she said it would shock the world, then it would definitely shock the world. You two will have to work hard during this period. Wang Sheng said to the two women, "I'll need at least 4 months to complete your concentric balls. You two only need to focus on running the business in the capital and don't care about anything else. They like to fight, so let them fight. The more chaotic, the better." The two women knew the situation outside better than Wang Sheng, so they nodded their heads. There's still half a year left. I'll arrange a few more concerts to add fuel to the fire. Wang Sheng stated his plan, then looked at Rosa and said, "You'll have to put more effort into the sisters' cultivation. I don't ask for anything else, but at least they need to be able to protect themselves." Rosa nodded heavily and said to Wang Sheng, "The sisters are very diligent in their cultivation. The group of sisters who learned to play musical instruments have already finished their apprenticeship and are now at the level of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. When the time comes, let the sisters perform in the Royal Grand Theater. Don't worry, Master." That night, they naturally slept together and enjoyed an endless amount of warmth. After arranging things at home for the time being, Wang Sheng went to find old Taoist Ling Su the next morning. "Old Taoist, how have you been recently?" When the two met, there was no need for formalities. They said whatever they wanted to say. Wang Sheng also asked directly. "Pretty good," the old Taoist replied casually. "I write every day to cultivate my mind. I don't have to think about fighting and killing." "Very good. All right, make a place for me tomorrow. I'll carve 2 more concentric balls here." Wang Sheng smiled and greeted the old Taoist. "When I'm tired of carving, you can drink with me." "Why? Aren't you afraid that I'll disturb you?" The old Taoist's eyes lit up, and he asked Wang Sheng with a smile. "I was inexperienced the first time, so I was a little more cautious." Wang Sheng knew what the old Taoist was asking about. He smiled and explained, "Now that it's done and I'm a great master, I don't have so many worries in my heart. It's because I didn't cultivate enough before. I only told others to let go, but I still couldn't." "Good." The old Taoist was very satisfied. "You've improved to be able to say these words. This place is big. Feel free to do as you please." Previously, when Wang Sheng carved concentric balls for the first time, he had done it to test his skills. Secondly, it was also a job that required patience. After finishing a concentric ball, Wang Sheng's patience as a sniper increased by another level. He was calm and would not lose control over small matters. In the eyes of the old Taoist, this was a sign of improvement in cultivation. Even if Wang Sheng did not have a breakthrough in cultivation, this performance was even more satisfactory to the old Taoist than a direct breakthrough. This kind of cultivation did not have to worry about an unstable foundation at all. It was simply the most ideal cultivation state in the eyes of the old Taoist. It was easy to move things over. He just had to send the things from Wang Sheng's workshop over. However, Wang Sheng did not start immediately. Instead, he began to look for suitable materials. White jade concentric white lotus ball. The lotus was white, so of course he could use white jade. Could it be that Peony and Rosa also used white? Of course, Wang Sheng had to look around to see if there were any pink or crimson stones that would make his carvings more beautiful. While Wang Sheng was looking for materials, the white jade concentric white lotus ball was placed on the table in front of the emperor. Chapter 1177. The concentric ball was spinning, showing a blooming white lotus, which was beautiful. Tianzi looked at it, and his eyes were straight. This wasn't the first time it was spinning, and Tianzi had been staring at it for several times. Not only that, when it stopped, Tianzi had also carefully counted it layer by layer. 50 layers of balls, not a single layer less. It really made people exclaim in admiration at the uncanny craftsmanship. No wonder it was called the Ghost Craft Ball. It deserved the name. Don't drool, the empress next to him kindly reminded. If your saliva drips in, how can I wipe it? Tianzi's eyes were wide open, and he looked at the empress next to him with dissatisfaction. Why are you staring at me? The empress looked at Tianzi as if nothing had happened and asked, if you stare at me again, this white jade concentric white lotus ball is also a gift from America to me, and it has nothing to do with you. It's good enough for you to open your eyes. Don't think of occupying it. The current empress had already clearly felt the difference between Mei and herself. That kind of intimacy from the blood couldn't be faked. Therefore, she and Tianzi both knew that it must be Wang Sheng who told the truth to Mei, but Mei didn't admit it. Tianzi looked for Wang Sheng to appreciate the concentric ball, and Wang Sheng directly let Mei handle it. Of course, he also expressed his intention to give it to Tianzi. Mei didn't say it, but she was quite happy in her heart. However, Mei didn't give the concentric ball to Tianzi, but to the empress. Her Majesty the Empress was overjoyed. Her own daughter knew that she gave a good thing to her, and she was really happy and sad at the same time. Therefore, this concentric ball became the treasure in the empress's heart. Not to mention others. Even Tianzi wanted to see it only when the empress was happy. He was almost angry with the empress's words, but Tianzi was also very happy in his heart. Since he really controlled the court, became the emperor, and found the empress from the people, the empress hadn't been really happy until she found out that her daughter, Mei, was not dead and was in the capital. Now it was obvious that Mei was close to her mother, but not to her father. However, the empress's happiness during this time really came from her heart, and Tianzi was also happy to see it. Okay, I won't drool. Tianzi coaxed Tianzi with soft words. Looking at Tianzi's complacent look, he couldn't help but feel happy. The empress gave Tianzi a proud smile, and then carefully put away the white jade concentric ball. Tianzi smiled proudly, then carefully put away the white jade concentric ball. This was Wang Sheng's work after advancing to a great grandmaster level martial sage. The fact that he had allowed Mei to give it away without hesitation showed how important Mei was to Wang Sheng. However, up until now, Wang Sheng had not expressed his willingness to accept the goodwill of the imperial family. What was he thinking? Could it be that they were planning to go to the Laojun temple? With the Grand Supreme Elder's current style of not caring about worldly affairs, it was not unacceptable as long as he did not lean towards any of the feudal vassals. While the Emperor and the Empress were having a good time, Mei and Rosa were busy searching for the best materials. Wang Sheng promised to carve a concentric ball for each of them. He asked them what flowers they liked, especially pink and crimson materials. Jade was definitely not suitable, but there were other substitutes. This was to make concentric balls for the two girls. Not for anything else, but just for the name of concentric ball, it was worth it for the two girls to plunder the whole world. As soon as the news got out, it didn't take long for someone to deliver something to him. What a joke. If the owners of Qiansheng Essence Moisturizing Workshop and Dream Workshop wanted to buy something, who wouldn't present it as if it was a treasure. Although the things sold in these shops were more expensive than the other, they were absolutely not hesitant when they wanted to buy something. As long as the goods in your hands were good, it was not a problem to increase the market price by a few percent. Who didn't want to be on good terms with the princess of Ning Kingdom? Just a little bit from her fingers would be a rolling source of wealth. In less than 2 days, there were more than a dozen different gems in front of Wang Sheng. All of them were of the red series. There were crimson, light red, pink, and big enough. It was just up to Wang Sheng to choose. With these two women who could save Wang Sheng a lot of trouble, and execution, helping him manage everything, Wang Sheng could save a lot of trouble. Wang Sheng praised the two women for their efficiency and lamented that the economic base determined the superstructure in every world. At the same time, he chose suitable gems. Boy, you really didn't cultivate much during this time? The old Taoist watched Wang Sheng choose the materials and asked casually, I didn't deliberately cultivate. Wang Sheng also didn't give special answer. He weighed a gem in his hand and estimated its density. At the same time, he replied, but sometimes when I carve, I definitely need to use spiritual energy, and my body has to replenish and absorb it. Do you think it works? The old Taoist asked again. These words might sound awkward to others, but Wang Sheng would definitely understand. I don't know. Wang Sheng shook his head. But there's no harm. Anyway, I can break through at any time now. This state is helping me to strengthen my foundation. I have a feeling that if I don't strengthen my foundation now, I'm afraid I'll have to spend more energy to break through when I really reach the legendary realm. Sometimes it's not a good thing to cultivate fast. By the way, old Taoist, how many years did you spend in the legendary realm? Old Taoist, I didn't have anyone to guide me at that time. Old Taoist Ling Su sighed. If only I had known you earlier. I wasted more than 50 years in the legendary realm. 50 years. Wang Sheng was shocked. Old Taoist, you can't be serious, right? How many years have the royal family's 3 great consecrators been there? How many years? Old Taoist Ling Su sneered. Among the 3 of them, which one has been there for less than 60 years? This time, it was Wang Sheng's turn to be surprised. The 3 great consecrators had been in the legendary realm for more than 60 years. How old were they? Didn't their cultivation speed increase in the past few years? 60 years ago, the 3 great consecrators were already legendary experts. How could the royal family be so secretive? Now, there are so many legendary experts. Are they all like this? When Wang Sheng explained his thoughts, old Taoist Ling Su directly sneered. What do you think? Do you think it's really that easy for them to break through? Because they can't break through, they've been pretending to be at the 8th stage for at least a few decades. Wang Sheng knew it wasn't easy, but the problem was that he didn't expect it to be so difficult. Suddenly, Wang Sheng thought of the Grand Abbey Dean and immediately had a counterexample. Grand Abbey Dean. The Grand Abbey Dean definitely didn't take that long. I was there when the Grand Abbey Dean broke through to the legendary realm. Right? Wang Sheng asked the old Taoist. The Grand Abbey Dean only spent a few years in the legendary realm before breaking through. That's because you didn't ask him how long he stayed at the 8th stage. Old Taoist Ling Su replied with a sneer. Chapter 1178. Wang Sheng's interest was immediately piqued when he heard the old Taoist mention the Grand Abbey Dean. He quickly asked, how long did the Grand Abbey Dean stay in the 8th stage? 20 years. Old Taoist Ling Su raised 2 fingers and made a victory sign. A whole 20 years. Wang Sheng could not imagine being trapped in a stage for 20 years, or even 50 to 60 years. But this was a fact that had happened before. During those years, the Grand Abbey Dean thought of many ways to break through. Old Taoist Ling Su raised his head and recalled. There was a period of time when he vigorously promoted Taoism, wanting to break through in Taoism cultivation. He took many detours. It was also during those years that I, old Taoist, couldn't stand it, so I left Taoism alone. Old Taoist, you're really too much. You didn't give your juniors any pointers when they were trapped in the same stage. How unkind. Wang Sheng could not help but grumble. Is there any elder like you? If you didn't have these 20 years of tempering, do you really think you would be able to cultivate to the 10th stage realm in just a few short years? Old Taoist Ling Su once again arrogantly snorted and said. Wang Sheng was speechless. Wasn't this the same logic as what he was doing now? When they were in the 8th stage realm, they had to go through a lot of hardships to grind their temperament. In the end, wasn't it just consolidating their foundations? Once he reached the legendary stage, it would become easier to break through. I understand. Wang Sheng was suddenly enlightened. He said to old Taoist Ling Su, the three great priests are also anxious. Otherwise, with their characters of serving people in the palace for a lifetime, they wouldn't need to temper themselves. As long as they lay a solid foundation in the 7th or 8th stage, they wouldn't need a few decades to break through. When it came to tempering one's temperament, was there anything more effective than serving others in the imperial palace? Unfortunately, Wang Sheng could not use such a method. Instead, he chose the boring way of sculpting. If I had understood this earlier, I wouldn't have wasted more than 50 years. Old Taoist Ling Su sighed and said, back then, I thought that I was gifted and that my cultivation would progress by leaps and bounds. In the end, when I was still in the legendary realm, I spent 20 years copying Taoist classics and finally took a step forward. Sigh. No wonder when he first met the old Taoist said that he was the one who copied all the ancient books in the Laojun Temple. So that was why. This was not just the honor of a Taoist sect. It was clearly a method of cultivation. Unfortunately, those who understood would not speak, and those who did not understand would never understand. But old Taoist, I still can't compare to you, and neither can they. After sighing, the old Taoist sighed again. Even when we're temperamental, we don't forget to cultivate diligently. You, on the other hand, don't even cultivate. This comprehension by analogy is good. You simply forgot to cultivate, and naturally, the results are obviously much better than those of us who deliberately pursue it. Hey, old Taoist, don't praise me too much. Wang Sheng smiled bitterly. In the end, isn't it because of the owner of that golden hairpin that's powerful? At the mention of the owner of the golden hairpin, the old Taoist's expression immediately brightened. That was really a peerless expert. Just by looking at how she integrated cultivation into her daily life, one could tell how brilliant her cultivation method was. I really don't know how brilliant the aura release from that long sword will be. Old Taoist Ling Su sighed again. Anyway, we'll find out when the time comes. There's no need to worry about it. Wang Sheng smiled and said, I'm actually quite curious. If the aura on the long sword is released in the core of the land of 1,000 extremes, what will happen to the place? A super demon beast could easily melt an iceberg when it was awakened. What would happen if the aura on the long sword was released? Wang Sheng was not lying. He was really curious. Speaking of which, you listened to the old Taoist's advice without hesitation and abolished all your hard work in cultivation. This is really beyond the old Taoist's expectations. The old Taoist also knew that he had to go with the flow, so he was not in a hurry. Instead, he once again talked to Wang Sheng about abolishing his cultivation and cultivating again. If your foundation is unstable, of course you have to start all over again. What's so hard to understand about that? Wang Sheng did not really mind this. It was just like when he was in school on Earth. If he failed a certain subject, didn't he have to start all over again? If he really couldn't do it, he would have to repeat and cultivate again. How normal was that? It's easy for you to say. The old Taoist smiled bitterly. But in this world, cultivation is the foundation of one's standing. How many people can honestly give up the cultivation that they've cultivated for so many years and start all over again? Do you think everyone is like you? You eat hundreds of pills of fortune and all kinds of supplementary and nourishing elixirs as if they were meals. Old Taoist, when I first started, I didn't even have a single gold coin on me. Wang Sheng listened to the old Taoist's words and couldn't help but laugh as he retorted, do you know how much I sold for the method of snow candy and refined salt? A good storage ring, a heavenly king fist technique, and some other things that added up to only a few hundred gold coins. In other words, Wang Sheng had made it very clear that he earned all the resources he had on his own. Again, do you think everyone is like you? The old Taoist rolled his eyes at Wang Sheng again and couldn't help but say, speaking of which, sometimes your way of thinking and doing things are just like people from another world. It's so out of place. But if you think about it carefully, there's some truth to it. It's really strange. Wang Sheng almost gave the old Taoist a thumbs up. He was indeed an expert who could tell at a glance that he was from another world. Unfortunately, the old Taoist was just describing and not guessing the truth. Naturally, Wang Sheng wouldn't be stupid enough to admit it. However, as Wang Sheng said, not everyone had the same determination as Wang Sheng, and not everyone had the same financial resources as Wang Sheng. Who would be willing to give up their cultivation that they had cultivated for years and start all over again? Let's not look at the sisters in the Grandview Garden. In order to recultivate the Yongshun mantra, the most basic condition was for Wang Sheng to prepare 500 million gold coins. Moreover, they couldn't suffer or be tired, and they had to be beautiful and in a good mood. In this world, how many people could meet these conditions? Didn't the old Taoist himself have been trapped in the legendary realm for more than 50 years? The three great priests of the royal family wanted them to recultivate. The moment their cultivation was destroyed would be the moment they died. In a place like the Imperial Palace, would anyone allow them to live long enough to recultivate to their original cultivation? Was the Grand Abbey Dean's condition good enough? Wasn't he also tortured by the old Taoist in the cultivation of Taoism for more than 20 years? You promised the two girls to carve 2 concentric balls for them. Why don't you hurry up and choose the materials? The old Taoist looked at Wang Sheng excitedly and said, "It's a good opportunity for me to see how to carve concentric balls. Let's see if I, the old Taoist, can also become a great master." Chapter 1179. To be honest, Wang Sheng had never seen such pure rubies the size of a head on earth. But on the table in front of him, there were more than a dozen rubies in a row. Even so, Mayer was still not satisfied. Because of the short time, these were the only rubies that could be found near the capital. If there was enough time, he could buy some from the big families. Maybe there would be bigger and better ones. Wang Sheng immediately rejected this idea. If the concentric sphere was any bigger, he would not be able to look at it. Wang Sheng let Mayer and Rosa each choose a color they liked, and then drove the two girls away. He and the old Taoist started working in the original practice room of Duke Chongqing's mansion. Since the old Taoist wanted to learn, he naturally chose one at random. If outsiders knew that the old Taoist, a casual beginner, was practicing with rubies the size of a head, they would be very surprised. But in Duke Chongqing's mansion, no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. This was how it should be. Thanks to you, the old Taoist is old, but he can still be served by so many girls every day. The old Taoist learned from Wang Sheng and polished the rubies into a round shape. He said to Wang Sheng, "If I knew this, the old Taoist wouldn't have practiced this skill. I regret it." Since Wang Sheng was working here, the supermodel sisters who were responsible for serving him naturally followed him here. This time was different from the last time. Last time, Wang Sheng closed the door for fear of disturbing a person's work. This time, it was directly open and he played with the old Taoist. The sisters who were on duty could also walk around freely, and they could even see how Wang Sheng worked with their own eyes. With such an environment, the women naturally served him attentively. Not to mention the way they treated Wang Sheng, they completely treated him like the person in the room. He treated the old Taoist with even more care and consideration. The old Taoist had been a poor Taoist all his life. It was only when he followed Wang Sheng that he was able to enjoy being served. Now, there were so many supermodels and beautiful women. Even the old Taoist was beginning to flirt. Of course, everyone knew that the old Taoist was just saying it. When it came to self-discipline, even Wang Sheng would be ashamed of his inferiority. The old Taoist liked this kind of casual atmosphere, and everyone was happy with it. Since they were a family, there was no need for so many complicated rules for outsiders. This time, the girls finally had the opportunity to see how skillful Wang Sheng was. The small tools made by Old Man Tai simply became alive in the hands of Wang Sheng. It was as if the tools could do whatever Wang Sheng wanted, and Wang Sheng could control them. In less than half a day, Wang Sheng had already flexibly made a few conical holes, and then carved out the innermost ball. Although the material was no longer white jade, but rubies, in front of Wang Sheng's set of tools that could use spiritual energy to carve, there was not much difference between the two. It was also the first time that the old Taoists saw Wang Sheng's exquisite craftsmanship. After watching for a long time, he seemed to have gotten the hang of it and began to learn from Wang Sheng. With the old Taoist cultivation, as long as his hands were steady, it was not a problem at all. It was just that it was his first time, so he didn't need to think about how exquisite the rotation was like Wang Sheng, in addition to making 50 layers. But this was not a problem for the old Taoist. Anyway, the old Taoist only cared about carving, and the design was left to Wang Sheng. In the training room, the two paid no attention to the affairs of the world. They carved the concentric spheres and enjoyed the boring and careful process together, which tested their patience and calmness. Outside, Mei and Rose were not idle either. With the white jade concentric white lotus ball that Mei personally sent to the Empress, and half of the shares of Liz Hen Lane, even if Mei demolished the whole capital, the royal family would not say a word. What's more, even if the whole capital was demolished, it was a big business that would return at least billions of gold coins to the royal family. Who would object? Blocking one's way to make money was like killing one's parents. How many people in the whole capital dared to block the emperor's way to make money? The important figures of the vassal states who came to avoid the disaster? As long as their own enjoyment was not affected, who cared about the life and death of the people outside? Mei was quite generous, which also benefited from the large amount of gold coins that Mei had hoarded. Wang Sheng had already told Mei how great the benefits of a huge cash flow were for the enterprise, and Mei had always kept it in mind. Mei could take out 500 million gold coins in cash at any time. If needed, Mei could take out another 1 billion gold coins in 10 days at most. That was how rich she was. With the cash, she kept buying houses and land. New courtyards and communities were also being built outside the city. New squares appeared one after another in a few days, which was beyond everyone's expectation. Mei had already started preparing the various materials a few months ago, and the engineering team had been trained to be outstanding. One had to know that the construction team under Mei were not ordinary people. Every single one of them was at least a cultivator of the second stage realm, and the highest was a cultivator of the fourth stage realm. Experts of this level, in the past, were all on the same level as fourth master Dai, but now they were merely foremen under Mei. This was a team of proper craftsmen. Other than that, there were at least 20 to 30,000 people who were in charge of digging, leveling, and repairing roads. Their job was to level the land outside the capital, repair the roads, and wait for the engineering team to build the houses and courtyards. All of them had cultivations, and the courtyard was built according to the same standard. The materials were prepared long ago, and the planning was very clear, so the construction was not too fast. Which of the grandmasters in Linglong Pavilion did not have a few disciples and disciples? Some of their disciples and disciples knew each other, and they pulled them up one by one to build houses for the commoners, and the speed was not too fast. With Mei's financial support, they did not need to worry about the materials and transportation, and only needed to display their skills every day. Where else could they find such a good opportunity to practice their skills and to earn gold coins? Outside the city, a new square was built almost every 3 days, which was comparable to the speed of Shenzhen that Wang Sheng had heard of on Earth. The walls of the inner and outer city were also torn down at an even faster speed, and everything was carried out in an orderly manner. With new houses and new land, Mei's demolition team brandished knives and gold coins, while explaining to the commoners that these plots of land were going to be torn down to build new residences for the important figures of the various feudal lords. With a multi-pronged approach, the commoners were extremely cooperative, and in less than a month, they had already moved a quarter of the population out. A month later, the construction of the outer city had also started. Meticulously designed manors began to lay the foundation and were built at a rapid speed. Chapter 1180. You brats, watch carefully and learn from me. If you can mobilize the army as efficiently as Li Junfeng, how much trouble can we save? While Mei Er was talking about her work, head steward Li was teaching a lesson to a group of commanders in the palace. The same scene happened in the Tang, Xia, and Song family guilds. Almost every family felt the same way. At the same time, every family sent out a large number of people to observe. Some even sent people to join the construction team, so that they could feel Mei Er's charisma at a close distance. Ever since Mei Er received the written pledge from the various kings, she made a big statement to everyone. She wanted everyone to see how something that everyone thought was not profitable could make a lot of money. Thus, everyone started to pay attention to Mei Er's actions. Everyone knew that Mei Er was not lying when she said that she wanted to make money. Thus, they wanted to see what kind of classic business method Mei Er was talking about. The first thing they did was to demolish the buildings on a large scale. Li Junfeng was dumbfounded. How could they use the assassins of Carefree City to do such a thing? Was this the same as using an anti-aircraft cannon to kill a mosquito? No, they're using our reputation to force the commoners to move. Someone quickly noticed something was wrong and reported, "We can't let them ruin our reputation." Forget it. Naturally, someone beside him mocked. Even if they don't use this reputation, will our reputation be good? How could the reputation of the various kings in the capital be good? If it was good, the heads of the officials in the capital would all be laid off. In the capital, only the royal family had a good reputation. At most, there were a few virtuous ministers under the royal family. Why did others need a good reputation? It was an exception. Mei Er's Li Junlane needed to have a good reputation. She needed to do business and earn money. Mei Er had already told the emperor and the empress about this, especially when Wang Sheng said, "In the business world, a good reputation can be eaten." Tianzi nodded his head repeatedly. Thus, right under the noses of the representatives of the various feudal vassals, Mei Er swaggered around the great Ming dynasty and used their bad reputation to force the people of the capital to relocate, and it went surprisingly smoothly. If one were to say that using assassins to force the commoners to sell their houses and land was not a brilliant move, then the construction outside the city was truly shocking. From the transportation of materials to the planning of the project, from the leveling of the site to the building of roads and bridges, to the rapid construction of the courtyard, the cooperation of tens of thousands of people, on average, there was not even one accident a day after a month. If it had to be said that it was because everyone was a cultivator and it was not easy for them to get injured, then the neatly built courtyards in just a few days was something that no one could imagine. No one had ever thought that there would be so many people working together. From the very beginning, from the flattening to the construction, to the decoration of the houses and the construction of the furniture, everything was done in an orderly manner. If it was a dozen people, a few dozen people, or even 100 people working together, it would not be considered a big deal, and no one would think that it was something amazing. But when the number of people exceeded tens of thousands, spread out over a few thousand mu of land, and still able to do things in such an orderly manner, without the slightest bit of chaos, then it would be a university. That year, just the logistics of the Runzi workshop alone, from the transportation of raw materials to the finished products, and also to prevent the details from being discovered, Mei Er pestered Wang Sheng for countless days to consult him. Only then did Wang Sheng explain to Mei Er some of the logistics management of the military and local enterprises. After a few more years of hard work, Mei Er finally managed to nurture such a skilled logistics team. If it was just 1 or 2 days, people might not be able to see it, but after a month, even the stupidest person would be able to understand the brilliance of others. Tens of thousands of people working at the same time. To put it bluntly, it was already a skill to be able to tidy up the daily necessities. But not to mention that they did not neglect the proper work. The quality of the courtyard that was built was top-notch. In the words of those people who had moved out, not to mention the compensation of the market price of gold coins, just the exchange of the dilapidated houses in the city for a new house with a single door and courtyard was already a huge profit. The new house was fully furnished, and as long as they moved their belongings over, they would be able to live comfortably. The surrounding shops and facilities were also complete, and it was even more convenient than when they were in the city. Not only did they have a good reputation, they also had a team that was easy to manage, which really made people envious. Especially that 10,000-man engineering team. All of them were second-stage realm, third-stage realm, and fourth-stage realm top exponents. With so many of them working together, it was as easy as moving one's fingers. If they weren't used to build houses and courtyards, but used to fight, they would obviously be 10,000 elite soldiers. Moreover, according to the division of the engineering team, it was clearly a military team. It was so brilliant that it made people feel terrified. At this time, all parties only saw that Li Jun Lane was scattering gold coins, and they had not seen the income yet. They had not learned how to earn money, but the organization and management of this huge team and the scheduling of the entire project were really admirable. Just looking at it was pleasing to the eyes, but as for how they did it, all parties were confused. If they wanted to know, they would have to experience it up close or ask Mayor personally. For the various feudal vassals to have such great power, it was definitely not an undeserved reputation, and arrogance could do it. Seeing this scene, almost all the forces expressed to Mayor that they wanted to send people to join the engineering team as a secondary school. Mayor did not say anything and immediately nodded her head in agreement. As long as they paid the gold coins, they could become big workers if they wanted, small workers if they wanted, carpenters if they wanted, tiling if they wanted. Even if they wanted to be a foreman, it was not a problem at all as long as they paid the gold coins. Other people worked to earn money, but when it came to their side, they had to pay even if they wanted to work. How could they argue? All parties felt awkward as if they had swallowed a dead mouse, but they had no choice. In order to learn her skills, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. Just this alone, Mayor did not stand on ceremony. She asked everyone for 10,000 gold coins, and they could work for as long as they wanted. Dozens of feudal vassals sent over 1,000 people to join the various teams to learn. Just from this alone, Mayor made a net profit of more than 10 million gold coins. Not only did she make money, she also had more than 1,000 people work for free. This business was really exquisite to the extreme. When the inner city and outer city began to build mansions along the moat in the inner city, the various parties had not done anything yet. But after another month, the mansions were completed. When Mayor started to make her move, the various parties finally saw Mayor's ability to make money at her beck and call. Originally, it was just the boundary of the city wall, and it did not cost anything at all. As soon as the price of the mansions was announced, all parties were dumbfounded. The price was more than 100 times what they had paid for the land back then. But the problem was that the supply could not meet the demand. Chapter 1181. The mansions in the inner city of the imperial city could only be bought by those with status and titles. Even the people of the major feudal vassals could only buy a few in total. Now, apart from those who had temporarily bought mansions to avoid the disaster, more people with titles were still fighting everywhere and were not holed up in the capital. There was originally a lot of space, but the mansions near the moat were built too beautifully. In the words of Wang Sheng, as Mayor told him, it was called the waterfront mansions. Not only were the designs exquisite, but there were also all kinds of carved beams and painted pillars. Moreover, Wang Sheng also gave some pointers to the great masters of construction, such as changing the scenery, exquisite, and all the characteristics of the Suzhou Gardens. Small bridges and flowing water, willow banks and breezes, pools and clouds, all kinds of exquisite sceneries. Mayor even did not hesitate to go to war. Under the watchful eyes of the public, she transplanted thousands of giant trees that were more than 100 years old into the inner city, all of which were transported from the land of 1,000 despair by the masters of the Laojun Temple. Just this alone was enough to make countless people exclaim in admiration. The banks of the entire moat had been refurbished. All kinds of picturesque scenes had been divided into each family's mansions. The moat was originally wide. At that time, Wang Sheng directly told Mayor about the Qinhuai River. Without saying anything, Mayor immediately summoned all the brothel's madams and asked them to take out the best girls under them to take care of her when she was old. As long as they had a good reputation, each of them would be given a big, comfortable, and finely carved pleasure boat. There would never be a low-class one. Every master of the pleasure boat had to be a talented girl who was famous throughout the capital. There were also rules for boarding the pleasure boat. If the master of the pleasure boat was not satisfied with the exchange of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting for a few days, they would not even be qualified to board the pleasure boat. The brothel madams stared at Mayor's arrangement with their mouths agape. They were all stunned. Originally, in their courtyard, 1,000 gold coins for a night's entanglement was already a sky-high price, but Mayor arranged for them to be qualified to board the pleasure boat without tens of thousands of gold coins. As for those who wanted to stay the night, it was up to them. Mayor didn't forget to arrange all kinds of entertainment along the moat. Of course, they were all on the side of the moat that was close to the outer city. As long as they were on the ship, they could say whatever they wanted. Once such a prospect was described, how could the brothels hold themselves back? He hated that he couldn't pull out all the prostitutes he had secretly cultivated. In just a short half a month, there were already dozens of talented women. Everyone was waiting for the construction site to be tidied up, and they would be able to board the pleasure boat immediately. Now, it could be said that living in this place was as peaceful as it could be, as lively as it could be, and as prosperous as it could be. Which of the big shots who came to avoid disaster wouldn't like such a lifestyle? To be able to come here to avoid disaster. What kind of person would have such a strong will? Seeing such a situation, how could he not quickly immerse himself in pleasure? Think about it. If they were to board a pleasure boat in the future and say that they were from a certain boat in the inner city, wouldn't they be treated as a distinguished guest? Among a group of rich guests, only they could enjoy this privilege. Just thinking about it made them feel that it was a very honorable thing. When Mayor started selling, those big shots who heard the news rushed over. They just wanted to take a look, and a large group of people immediately fell in love with it. Many people immediately placed their orders without hesitation, wishing that they could live in this exquisite garden that very day. In an instant, those who had already bought a mansion all regretted it. They quickly ran to Mayor and asked if there was any way to buy it. Exchanging it was fine. Mayor didn't make it difficult. Buying was fine, but exchanging was out of the question. However, if they wanted to buy a new one, they had to sell the old one. After all, the emperor had decreed that one title could only buy one mansion. Previously, those people fought hard, but at that time the city walls hadn't been dug up and there was no land here at all, so they could only buy from the city. But now that the city walls have been dug up, and with Mayor's generosity, each of the famous waterside mansions had an area of at least dozens of mu, which was much better than those they bought in the city. What else was there to say? Sell. Quickly sell the mansions built on the land they had bought before, and then come here buy them. Some of the houses that they lived in were built quite well, but compared to Mayor's house, they were like Grandma's house. Now, even if they wanted to sell the real estate in the inner city, they could only sell it to those with titles. Those without titles couldn't buy it. The problem was that those who were qualified to buy it all had their eyes on the famous waterside mansions around the moat. Who will like the inside? Therefore, everyone could only bite the bullet and sell to Mayor. Fortunately, Mayor didn't try to cheat everyone on this. At that time, how many gold coins were spent to buy it? How many gold coins were spent to build it? And how many gold coins were used to decorate it? If they reported the number, Mayor would buy it at double the price. At this time, there was no reason for them to refuse. After a trip to the capital, in just a few months, they had earned double the gold coins they spent. This could be justified anywhere. Sell. What else was there to say? Sell. However, they hadn't even seen the gold coins from selling the mansions, let alone touch them. Not only that, they had to make up for the price difference between the two sides. This wasn't a small amount of gold coins. It should be known that the price of Mayor's mansions was directly multiplied by 100 gold coins from the normal price of land. Very good. It was in line with Mayor's usual style of doing business. Li Jianfeng also didn't embarrass Mayor. It inherited the consistent style of Qian Sheng Yuan Run Zi Fong, Dream Workshop, and Yi Yun Workshop. Expensive. Extremely expensive. Yes, it was expensive, but it was definitely worth it. Not to mention the exquisite scenery and the surrounding arrangements. Just the protective formation in each mansion, once activated, would be comparable to the level of protection of their respective royal palaces. This was worth a lot of gold coins. Moreover, what area was this? By the big shots waved their hands, and a large amount of gold coins was sent to Li Junfang. Then, they took over the mansions one by one, reported to the government, paid taxes, and changed the property to their own names. Those who had titles of nobility bought a set for themselves. Seeing that there were still quite a few left, they thought about those who still had titles of nobility in their families. Without another word, they also bought a set for those who were not present but had titles of nobility. They were all from big families, and everyone could see that these mansions were scarce in resources. If they missed this opportunity, they would not be able to find it again. They had to quickly take it down first. Looking at the situation, in the future, the mansions in the capital would only rise and not fall. If they took it down and held it in their hands, they could enjoy it on a daily basis, and when it was necessary, they could also make a huge profit. This transaction was worth it. Less than a day after Li Junfang released the mansions, the hundreds of mansions along the moat in the inner city were all sold. There was not a single one left. Even then, there were still people beating their chests and stamping their feet, regretting that they felt that they were a step too late. Chapter 1182. However, these regretful people didn't regret for too long, because in less than 3 days, Mayer gave them another chance. Previously, she sold the waterfront mansions in the inner city, which were on the inner side of the moat. The ones on the outer side of the moat were also close to the moat, in the same prosperous area, with the same exquisite design. The only difference was that one was on the inner side of the moat, while the other was on the outer side. Of course, there were still some differences. For example, the one in the outer city, called the Waterfront Manor, was relatively smaller. Each of the mansions in the inner city had an area of tens of acres, but the one in the outer city was only about 20 acres. At the same time, another advantage of the outer city was that there was no restriction on the title of nobility. Anyone could buy it as long as they had the gold coins. The small area meant the large number of units. There were more than 500 waterfront mansions in the outer city, and some of them were in the prosperous areas, arranged for all kinds of eating, drinking, and entertainment areas. It could be said that there were only things that the buyer could not think of, and there was nothing that the seller could not do. What else was there to say? Buy. Just treat it as an investment. If they didn't need it in the future, they could sell it at a higher price. Anyone could see that such a scarce resource was not a fool. With such a great opportunity in front of them, they would be stupid not to buy it. Not only that, but there were also people frantically buying in the commercial area. At this moment, businessmen were more accurate than the people in charge of the big families. Moreover, in the commercial area, there was no restriction on the title of nobility even in the inner city. As long as someone wanted to buy it, they would sell it. The surrounding area was full of people who could afford waterfront mansions, or the property of the royal family, or the mansions of the courtiers. There was no fear that there would be no customers in such a place. Even Mayer said that if she hadn't agreed to the request of the kings of the vassal states, apart from this batch of real estate and pawn collection and lending business, she wouldn't have left these commercial areas to them. If they could buy it, they would have burned incense in front of the Tao ancestor for 8 lifetimes. In just 3 days, both mansions and shops inside and outside the moat were all sold out. In these 3 days, there were hundreds of people counting the gold coins in Li Junfang. They used the kind of gold coin trough that Wang Sheng had told Mayer about. There was no limit to how many gold coins there were. They counted stacks after stacks of gold coins. The hundreds of people were so tired that they almost collapsed. It was the same in the Yamen. Over the past 3 days, there was an endless stream of buyers who came to report, almost breaking the threshold. What made the officials the happiest was that those who came to report had to pay a 10% tax. Even if it was only 10%, it was still 10 times the price of the land a few months ago. The amount of gold coins collected by the government alone was more than 700 million. This also meant that Mayer had received 7 billion gold coins in 3 days. When had the sly officials in the capital ever seen such an astronomical amount of gold coins? Many people were dazzled by the dazzling light of the gold coins. If it wasn't for the Son of Heaven's preparations and the presence of old eunuch Shun, one of the 3 great consecrators, at least half of those gold coins would have been divided by these fellows. Of course, there wasn't such a good opportunity now, but the officials were unusually happy. With such a large amount of gold coins, it could be said that this year was definitely a rich one. It wasn't easy to do anything when they collected the gold coins, but there were gold coins in the treasury. They had to spend them eventually. When that time came, there would be opportunities to do so. However, Li Junfeng was even more tempting. Even the officials had collected more than 700 million in taxes. That meant that Li Junfeng had sold 7 billion gold coins in 3 days. Even after deducting the cost of buying houses, moving houses, land, and construction, the profit was at least 5 billion gold coins. All the officials in the capital, including most of the royal family, as well as the people from the vassal states who were watching and learning from Mayer's money-making methods, were all drooling. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 droplets, it was a gush of saliva. What made them want to cry was that so many gold coins were actually contributed by their own families. The buyers of those waterfront mansions were all the descendants of the vassal states. There wasn't a single outsider. In other words, only half of the commercial real estate was sold to the local businessmen in the capital. The other half was still sold to the descendants of the vassal states. This is just a warm-up, not part of the lesson. Someone approached Mayer and wanted to ask for some advice. However, Mayer directly replied, "We'll see the results in another month." During this period of time, the entire outer city of the capital had almost been moved. Even the guilds of the vassal states had been moved to the waterfront mansions in the inner city or the waterfront mansions in the outer city. The entire outer city of the capital had become a huge construction site. While everyone was bewildered, they also calmed down and continued to observe. Anyway, it was only a month's time. Everyone could afford to wait. Besides, this 1 month's time was just right for everyone to come into contact with all aspects of the capital's construction. What they learned was the experience of leading troops. The construction team was extremely efficient. They weren't building high-rise buildings, but Chinese-style courtyards and mansions. Even if it was a heavy beam, it wasn't a difficult task for these 3rd or 4th realm cultivators. The construction speed was very fast. With the speed of construction by tens of thousands of people, dozens of mansions were built in a few days. With the moat as the starting point, dozens of mansions were built in circles. Similarly, all kinds of commercial facilities were available. The mansions were beautifully built. Other than the lack of the waterfront by the moat, everything else was also complete. In addition, there were 8 rivers surrounding the capital. The moat also had its source. There were still a few rivers, so they could still make some waterfront articles. 1 month later, Li Junfeng directly launched thousands of mansions and courtyards in the outer city for sale. Before this batch of mansions and courtyards was launched, the emperor first gathered all the representatives and marked out an area in the outer city of the capital for them. Previously, when the emperor agreed to tear down the city walls, he had a condition. That was that each party had to be responsible for the security and protection of the outer city of the capital. This point was not denied, and all of them agreed. The emperor made it even clearer. He directly announced to the world which area of the capital would be in charge of. It was written clearly. Before everyone understood what it meant, Mayor Li Junfeng had already launched thousands of mansions and courtyards. At the same time, they also launched a complete housing loan system. Previously, the famous waterfront mansions had already plundered almost all the gold coins from the nobles. Now, where could Li Junfeng find more gold coins? Could it be that those commoners could take out gold coins to buy such expensive real estate in the capital? Many people were waiting to see a joke. Li Junfeng had hoarded so many houses, it would be strange if they could sell them. However, this housing loan system was a little interesting. Chapter 1183. With a 30% down payment, one could get a 70% loan from Liz Henlane. The loan would be divided into 10, 20, and 30 years, regardless of identity, as long as one was not a wanted criminal by the capital authorities. Even if one was a criminal wanted by various countries, anyone could buy the house. Furthermore, the countries in charge of public security could not touch these people because this was the condition they had promised the emperor. Identity was not a problem, but their ability to repay the loan in the future had to be carefully examined. Age, occupation, cultivation, and so on all had to be considered. Furthermore, if an accident occurred and the loan was not repaid for several months, the house would be taken back as a mortgage, and the previous loan and down payment would not be refunded. Of course, to get a loan, one still had to report it to the authorities, and they would have to acknowledge the loan contract. When the time came, the authorities would be the ones to take back the house. With such harsh conditions, who would borrow money to buy a house? The people from the major families were a little disapproving. The hundreds of waterscape manors and waterside mansions in front had already exhausted the purchasing power of the families with the greatest purchasing power. 7 billion gold coins. Including the taxes, it was close to 8 billion gold coins. A portion to each family, they would have close to 1 billion gold coins in cash. How could they have any extra purchasing power? Expecting people outside of the major families to borrow money to buy a house. How much face did Wang, Sheng, and Mayer have to dare to think like this? The carefully built mansions and courtyards in the capital were probably going to be left empty. Almost everyone in the capital was waiting to see Liz Henlane make a fool of themselves. They were waiting to see Wang, Sheng, and Mayer make a fool of themselves. However, the matter of 7 billion gold coins in 3 days was quickly sent back to each family through messenger birds. In the palace of the kingdom of Song, Song Yan's body trembled slightly after reading the message sent by the messenger bird. Then, she regained her composure and handed the note to Song Honda, who was eating with her. The current Duke of Song, Song Honda, still looked hale and hearty, but his cultivation had been almost depleted. He was only a healthy man, no different from an ordinary person. Even though he could walk around and look like a normal person, without his cultivation, he was still just a normal person. And this was because Song Yan had used Wang Sheng's favor to invite 2 senior Taoists of the Qing generation to perform the 9 secret words on Song Honda twice a day. Without the support of these 2 high Taoists, perhaps it will be difficult for Song Honda to be an ordinary person. It was certain that he would linger in bed. Although Song Honda had lost his cultivation, his eyesight was still there. Just now, Song Yan's body trembled slightly. How could he not see it? What kind of big news was this that could make her, a woman who was not inferior to men, so excited? When he took the note, Song Honda glanced at it and his hands trembled. He couldn't even hold the note, and it fell to the ground. How was this possible? Song Honda cried out in surprise. Then, he crouched down and picked up the slip of paper, reading it again carefully. After reading it, Song Honda's hands were still shaking, but he could already hold the note with one hand. With his other hand, Song Honda clutched his chest. It took him a while to catch his breath. 7 billion gold coins in 3 days. Song Honda finally said. He felt an indescribable sense of regret. It was because there weren't enough people to count the gold coins. That's why it took 3 days. If I had known that he was so capable, I would have made him my son-in-law, even if I had to get everyone to swarm him. Hearing Song Honda's words, Song Yan's eyes suddenly reddened. She raised her head to look at Song Honda, then lowered her head again and continued drinking silently. This time, Song Honda really regretted it. If he had known this would happen, why did he do it? After training in the land of 1,000 despair for more than 10 years, he still hadn't worn down his arrogance. What did he get in return? Wang Sheng, the boy of fortune, had ended up benefiting others. Moreover, Wang Sheng was the first to notice that something was wrong with his body. If he had asked for Wang Sheng's help at that time, his cultivation might not have been crippled. The 2 old Taoists of the Qing generation who helped him recuperate every day had said that the 9 words incantation was created by Elder Wang. Wang Sheng's cultivation of the 9 words incantation was 10 times better than theirs. If Wang Sheng had really helped, Song Honda might have had a chance to cultivate again. Unfortunately, all these great prospects were ruined by Song Honda's arrogance and obstinacy. In particular, after he returned to the Song Kingdom, he sent people to kill Wang Sheng. This made him even more enmity. It was impossible for him to ask Wang Sheng to help. Putting aside these things that were directly related to Song Honda, just the gold coins alone were enough to make Song Honda's heart tremble. 7 billion gold coins. Even though Song Honda was the master of the Song family, even though he was the Duke of Song in name and the monarch of the Song Kingdom, he had never seen 7 billion gold coins in cash. There was no doubt that the total wealth of the Song Kingdom was more than 7 billion gold coins. However, it was accumulated by generations of ancestors of the Song family over hundreds of years. 7 billion gold coins in 3 days, what kind of concept was that? It could probably fill dozens of palaces, right? How many things could be done with 7 billion gold coins? How many good things could it buy? To what extent could it improve the Song Kingdom? If all these gold coins belonged to the Song Kingdom, what kind of situation would it be? The Song Kingdom would have dominated the world long ago. Wang Sheng had such a great advantage in the land of 1,000 to spare. If they accepted Wang Sheng back then, wouldn't the whole land of 1,000 to spare belong to the Song Kingdom? Just thinking about all these made Song Honda's imagination turn into heart-wrenching regret. Why didn't he like Wang Sheng back then? He had already displayed his absolute advantage in a land of 1,000 to spare. Song Honda looked at his daughter with her head lowered in silence. He thought about how his daughter had secretly worn the wedding dress sent by Dream House in the capital to admire it alone at night, and then cried alone. Song Honda regretted it so much that he wanted to dig his brains out. What kind of brainless things had he done in the past? In Worry-Free City, the city lord also received the news that Liz Hen Lane had made a profit of 7 billion gold coins in 3 days. Looking at this news, the city lord remained silent for a long time. Then, he sent his butler to invite Uncle Lee to the city lord's mansion. "What's wrong? You're finally willing to let me out?" Uncle Lee taunted the city lord with an unruly attitude as he enjoyed the delicacies in the city lord's mansion. The city lord shook his head and signaled the butler with his eyes. The butler immediately sent the message via messenger bird to Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee casually wiped his hands on his clothes. He took the piece of paper and glanced at it casually. After just one glance, Uncle Lee's eyes suddenly became as big as copper bells. Then, he suddenly straightened his attitude and began to carefully read the records. Chapter 1184. How is that possible? Uncle Lee finally confirmed the figure a few times before he realized that he had not seen wrongly and let out a cry of surprise. The Lord of Worry-Free City would definitely not lie to him. Moreover, such a huge piece of news would spread all over the world in a few days. How could it be fake? But 7 billion in 3 days, how was that possible? At this moment, Uncle Lee was really a little afraid. Wang Sheng had a peerless expert, the old Taoist Ling Su, who could take his life any time. Uncle Lee was not afraid. After all, he could escape any time. Uncle Lee was not afraid of the Lord of Worry-Free City suppressing him because of his binding oath. But if it was a life-and-death situation, an oath was nothing to Uncle Lee. Even if Wang Sheng came knocking on his door, Uncle Lee was not afraid. Wang Sheng was not his match. But when Wang Sheng had a few billion gold coins in his hands, it was a different matter. Don't think that Uncle Lee was already an unimaginable expert in the 11th stage realm. But he still felt afraid. When the amount of gold coins reached a certain level, it could really crush someone to death. How much would it cost to kill an expert in the 8th stage realm? Less than 1 million gold coins. Even for an expert in the early stage of the legendary realm, it would only be slightly more than 1 million. If Wang Sheng were to really go all out, he would use billions of gold coins to buy Uncle Lee's life. Everyone in the world, regardless of whether they knew martial arts or not, will be thinking of ways to kill him. By then, even if Uncle Lee hid at the ends of the earth, it would be useless. Numerous people would dig him out from his hiding place and attack him together, chopping off his head. If ordinary people were already like that, then what about those professionals? Worry-free city, godly might prison, and even the top expert from the various sects would probably put down all their grudges and tear him into pieces. Perhaps when that time came, the first person to make a move would be the Lord of Worry-Free City. 7 billion gold coins. It was definitely enough to crush someone to death. What does the city lord mean? Uncle Lee suppressed the fear in his heart and asked the city lord as if nothing had happened. I just want Uncle Lee to know how many gold coins I've lost because of you. The city lord chuckled and said to Uncle Lee, in terms of environment, my worry-free city is not inferior to the capital city. In terms of safety, my worry-free city is not inferior to the capital city either. In fact, it might even be better. In terms of land, the worry-free city also has plenty of it. In fact, it's even easier to relocate than the capital. At this point, the city lord was already gnashing his teeth in anger, but everything was better than the capital, but the Li Jun lane was opened in the capital. I heard that the taxes collected by the imperial court exceeded 700 million gold coins. Originally, Duke Changsheng still had investments in the worry-free city, such as spices and the production of various tools. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, a smart person like him wouldn't put all his eggs in one basket. Even a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows, let alone someone as shrewd as Duke Changsheng. At the end of his story, the city lord started to laugh. Back then, when he was being hunted down, his first thought was to run to the carefree city. But now, why did he completely abandon the carefree city? I believe Uncle Lee should be very clear about this. The city lord didn't ask why, but Uncle Lee clearly knew. Of course, it was because of Uncle Lee himself. A baffling reason caused both sides to become enemies. Furthermore, it was a very unworthy reason. Uncle Lee, let's go back to work. After saying this, the city lord let out a long sigh and said to Uncle Lee, you'd better make me satisfied. Let me know that what you've done for me is worth billions of gold coins. That way, I won't be on your side in vain. Actually, both the city lord and Uncle Lee understood that there was a if not at the end of this sentence. Otherwise, when Uncle Lee's oath time was up, he would probably be hunted down by the entire carefree city. This time, the city lord of the carefree city probably regretted his decision. Back then, Uncle Lee had broken the rules, but in the end, Wang Sheng had left. The city lord's seat was crooked, so he naturally regretted it now. The same thing happened not only in the Song Kingdom and the Carefree City, but also in the Shi Kingdom, the Gan Kingdom, the Xia Kingdom, the Tang Kingdom, the Feng Kingdom, and the Qiu Kingdom. Perhaps the only country that didn't regret this was the Dai Kingdom. This was because from the start, the Dai Kingdom and Wang Sheng had no chance of becoming friends. Earning 7 billion gold coins in 3 days shocked everyone. Fortunately, Mayer still had a flaw. That was the thousands of exquisite residences and courtyards that were released later. There were also tens of thousands of residences in the huge construction sites in the outer city. Of course, there were also residences in the inner city, and the prices were even higher. If these residences couldn't be sold, the Li Jinfang would become a big joke. So what if they earned 7 billion gold coins in 3 days? They would only be thrown into a huge hole and would never be able to make a comeback. In these 3 days, the large clans had used up all their purchasing power. Think about it. Even a country like the Xia Kingdom had to sell some of its properties to raise 500 million gold coins. Even if the other vassal states were doing well, how much better could they be? Only the important figures of the various states who still had some savings in their hands were able to buy the residences in the capital with gold coins. These were their personal properties, not the public property of the family, nor the national treasuries of the vassal states. Now, whether it was the national treasuries of the various states or the private properties of the important figures, they were almost all used up. How many people could fork out such a large sum of gold coins to buy a residence in the capital? The residences and courtyards that were released in this batch were much smaller than the waterfront residences and waterscape manors. The larger ones were only a few mu of land. They were exquisite, and for those who didn't come from wealthy families, they were very suitable residences. However, the problem was that the prices were too high. Not everyone could afford a price that was 100 times the average price of land. Even if the Li Zhenfang released the so-called mortgage loans, which allowed one to borrow money to buy a residence, how many people would be willing? Was it that easy to borrow money from the loan sharks? With the interest rolling in, the savings of many years would probably be used to fill the huge hole that was the loan sharks. Everyone felt that the mortgage loans from the Li Zhenfang would be all bark and no bite. This was because the Li Zhenfang didn't announce the interest rate of the mortgage loans. In everyone's mind, since it was a business of collecting and lending loans, it would definitely be the same as ordinary loan interest. It would at least be a monthly interest rate of 10%. Even if the Li Zhenfang wanted to make a small profit but quick turnover, the monthly interest rate would still be 5%. Otherwise, how could they break even and make money? Then, on the third day, the Li Zhenfang announced to the whole world that half of the thousands of residences that were released had already been sold. Following that, the interest rate of the mortgage loans from the Li Zhenfang was also set. If they were to borrow on a yearly basis, the annual interest rate would be 10%. Chapter 1185. Half of the thousands of mansions were sold. How is that possible? Apart from the descendants of the feudal vassals, who else could afford it? Reality taught all the nobles who were waiting to see a joke a solid lesson. Indeed, the feudal vassals were rich, so the largest, most expensive, and best mansions were all bought by the people of the feudal vassals. However, it would be a big joke to say that they had already used up all of their purchasing power. There was another group of people who were interested in real estate in the capital. They were the small clans that weren't that big. Don't forget that Qin Xingyuan had once made a deal with those antique weapons that he had brought back from the peerless treasure trove. Those antique weapons were worthless in the eyes of the Shur and Gan clans. But in the eyes of those small clans that didn't have a deep foundation, they were rare items that could be used to decorate their appearances. As long as a clan had these ancestral, ancient weapons, it meant that the clan had a long history and people would have confidence in their descendants. These small clans naturally weren't poor if they could afford these antique weapons that were worth 100 or 200,000 gold coins. In that case, luxurious mansions that were worth a few 100,000 gold coins in the capital were even less of a problem. Was there anything better than living in the capital to show off one's family's foundation? When Lijian Lane opened for business, they didn't forget to inform these old customers. Of course, they definitely couldn't afford those waterfront mansions that were worth millions of gold coins, or the even more expensive waterfront mansions that were worth tens of millions of gold coins. However, the smaller mansions that were worth hundreds of thousands of gold coins in the outskirts of the capital became their target. The large clans were all focused on the same targets that they were wary of, but they neglected that these small clans also excitedly came to the capital. After all, at this time, the safest place in the world was the capital and the worry-free city. Even some important figures from the various vassal states had to come to the capital. Wasn't it normal for people from small clans to come to the capital? Who would take a second look? However, it was these small clans that they didn't pay much attention to, who were usually not worth mentioning in their eyes, that divided up more than 2,000 fine mansions one by one. The price of each mansion wasn't high, but when added together, it was close to 2 billion gold coins. This wasn't a false figure because they had all reported and paid taxes to the authorities. It was another 200 million gold coins in 3 days. The petty officials responsible for counting the gold coins were about to collapse from exhaustion. This couldn't be faked. All in all, including the taxes, it was already tens of billions of gold coins, and it had only been 6 days. 10 billion gold coins in 6 days. This had already broken the record for doing business. No one would be able to surpass this number, right? The people of the various vassal states who were waiting to see Lijian Lane become a laughingstock were embarrassed. These small families that they had always looked down on had been slapped in the face with 2 billion gold coins. Fortunately, it was only 2 billion gold coins, which meant that only a small portion of the courtyards and mansions had been sold. There were still a few thousand houses left, as well as the entire outer city of the capital that was many times larger than the land that had been sold. His purchasing power had been completely depleted, right? However, the interest of the mortgage in Li Jianfeng really shocked everyone. The monthly interest was 1%, and the annual interest was 10%. How is this a loan? Wasn't this clearly a good deed? Any person who borrowed money would probably die of laughter if they had to bear such an interest. If he really calculated it according to this interest rate, even if it was a 30% down payment, it would not be too unbearable. Even the people of the various vassal states were a little tempted. If they squeeze a little more and got a down payment of 30%, they could get a loan to buy a mansion in the capital. They all had insider information. After all, so many of their children were working with Mei Er's construction team. After this batch of mansions, there was another batch of large mansions that were similar in size and scale to the Waterscape Manor. It was said that they were all located along the 8 rivers of the capital, and there were ponds and swimming pools in the mansions. It was really beautiful. This batch of mansions could totally be bought. In any case, they didn't need a title. They only needed gold coins. Experts who had reached a certain level wouldn't dare to take out 1,000,000 gold coins at once. But if they squeezed a little and circulated it to their friends, they would definitely have a few 100,000 gold coins. This way, as long as they had a down payment of a few 100,000 gold coins, they could still get a loan for a 3 to 4 million gold coins mansion. If the big shots could live in the inner city and the Waterscape Manor, then why couldn't the small shots have a Waterscape Manor next to the 8 rivers in the capital? As for the interest of the loan, if they really calculated it at 10% per year, adding up the principal and interest, it would only be 170,000 to 180,000 gold coins a year. For their income, it should be more than enough. In fact, they could even repay it in less than 20 years. Li Jianfeng was thoughtful. The loan could be repaid in advance. If the big shots were thinking about mansions worth millions, then the small shots would naturally start thinking about mansions worth 1 or 2 million, or even a few 100,000. Faced with a stable real estate that could be passed down to their children and grandchildren, and was also in a prosperous area of the capital, would it be a loss to buy it for a few 100,000? From the looks of it, not only would it not be a loss, it might even be a profit. The big shots might be waiting to see a joke, but their subordinates had already started to make their own plans. If the big shots could send their children to the capital to avoid trouble, then couldn't the small shots have similar thoughts? The loan from Li Jianfeng was really tempting. Although Li Jianfeng was a new shop that had only been open for a few months, with a reputation of Wang Sheng and Mei Er as a foundation, no one doubted the credibility of Li Jianfeng. Just as Wang Sheng had said, in the business world, sometimes a good reputation could really make a living. It wasn't just the people from the feudal vassals who were tempted. All the experts in the world, the assassins of Worry-Free City, the assassins of Godly Might Prison, and a merchant from all over the world, who wasn't the same. Li Jianfeng was offering such a low interest rate. Wouldn't it be a pity if they didn't take advantage of it? Moreover, it wasn't a bad thing to own a property in the capital. Since the cultivators were like this, was there no ordinary person who wouldn't be tempted? In this world, there were those who didn't have a high level of cultivation but still had a prosperous family business. This even included the people in the capital who had moved away. Their ancestors had many houses and received sufficient compensation. They had a big mansion outside the city, and they had gold in their hands. Wouldn't they be interested in buying another one in the city? While many people were thinking about it, the emperor and the empress in the imperial city, as well as Mayer and Rosa in Duke Chongqing's mansion, were almost a little shocked. Because when Wang Sheng had analyzed it for them, it was a big business that was worth tens of billions of gold. This book had already shocked everyone, but now it seemed that it was far from that amount. Chapter 1186. What had been sold was only the 2 sides of the moat and the periphery. Compared to the area of the entire inner and outer city, it was insignificant. Even if it was calculated based on the area of the outer city, it was not even 1/10 of it. Strictly speaking, it was at most 1/15 to 1/20 of it. The closer it was to the inner city, the higher the price. Everyone knew this common sense. The price of the inner city was definitely different. However, Even if it was only half the price, if the entire outer city was added up, it would still be 10 times the current price. Now, including the Li Jun lane and the taxes from the government, it had already been sold for a total of 10 billion gold coins. If it was really 10 times, it would be 100 billion. 100 billion gold coins, ah! If Mayer and the Empress split it 50-50, which meant that Wang Sheng and the Son of Heaven would split it 50-50, each family would have 50 billion gold coins. What kind of concept was 50 billion gold coins? 5 gold coins were 1 tael, 50 gold coins were 1 jin, 50 billion gold coins were 1 billion jin, 500,000 tons. If Wang Sheng was here, he would also be stunned. The total gold reserves on Earth were less than 140,000 tons. Even if this world's gold reserves were abundant, dozens of times more than Earth's, a single capital city would collect 1 million tons of gold coins. Even if it was a source spirit world, it was still an extremely terrifying matter. The Son of Heaven and the Empress were indeed frightened by this number. If they really collected 100 billion gold coins, perhaps the capital city would immediately become a delicacy that was even sweeter than the mountains. It just so happened that this delicacy had just destroyed the city walls, leaving them in a defenseless state. Just thinking about the consequences, the Son of Heaven felt his heart tremble. Don't look at how he was now a legend realm expert and had cultivated the imperial calmness cultivation technique to the extreme. But facing the consequences that could destroy his family, he still couldn't suppress the fear in his heart. So what if the 3 great consecrators' cultivation reached the heavens? Could it be that the 3 great consecrators could fight against the heroes of the world? If the experts of the 8 major vassal states joined forces, they could probably wipe out the capital city. Manager Li was by the Son of Heaven's side. Steward Zhou was also there. Only old eunuch Shun was responsible for the taxes these few days and was not in the imperial city. With Manager Li and Steward Zhou's familiarity with Tianzi, how could they not notice the fear in Tianzi's heart? They were all old and cunning eunuchs who had fought their way up from the bottom of the imperial palace to the position of Minister of Offerings. How could they not understand how terrifying it was to have so many gold coins? Gold coins were good stuff. Everyone wanted them, and everyone wanted more of them. Wasn't it all for the sake of these dazzling golden things? In the beginning, everyone thought that the royal family was slowly recovering and starting to plan for the world. The increase in wealth and influence was a good thing. However, when one's wealth reached a certain point where everyone began to drool and feel fear, even those who possessed wealth began to feel fear. At this time, the more he had, the more afraid he would be. Even Steward Li and Steward Zhou, these 2 10th-degree realm top exponents, when they heard that figure, their hearts trembled, not to mention the Son of Heaven and Empress. Head Steward Li gave Steward Zhou a look. As an old associate of several decades, Steward Zhou immediately understood Head Steward Li's meaning. He bowed to the Son of Heaven to ask for his permission to go to Duke Chongqing's residence for advice. The Son of Heaven naturally agreed readily. He and Empress really wanted to know, in the face of such a huge amount of wealth, how could they be at ease, and how could they not feel fear? Not only the Son of Heaven and Empress were afraid, even Mayer and Rosa were completely frightened. Initially, they only expected it to be a business of tens of billions. Although this figure was already very exaggerated, it was not to the extent that it was terrifying. But 6 days later, looking at the almost piled-up gold coins, the 2 ladies calculated the possible profits of the entire outer city and immediately panicked. Compared to the Son of Heaven and Empress, Rosa and Mayer were much more flustered. They could immediately go to Wang Sheng to ask for advice. Didn't they just collect 10 billion gold coins? It was far from being as outrageous as 100 billion, wasn't it? When Steward Zhou hurried to Duke Chongqing's residence, Mayer and Rosa were carefully watching Wang Sheng and the old Taoist carved concentric balls in the training room. This was the time when Wang Sheng and the old Taoist could not be disturbed. The 2 ladies just watched quietly, and no one made a sound. Seeing Steward Zhou, who was brought in by Steward Wang, Mayer especially made a gesture to Steward Zhou to keep quiet. Steward Zhou was also tactful. He stood aside obediently and quietly watched Wang Sheng and the old Taoist work. It had to be said that when the two of them worked, they were really focused and did not pay attention to the outside world. The old Taoist was practicing, so he did it relatively casually. But Wang Sheng's hands were really as steady as a rock, without the slightest tremble. Putting 50 layers of balls in a diameter of more than 10 centimeters was definitely not something that could be achieved by being careful. Steward Zhou's eyes were sharp. He only took a look at the semi-finished product that Wang Sheng was working on for a while, and he already had a plan in mind. This time, what Wang Sheng was carving was not a 50-layer set of balls, but at least a 60-layer set or even 70-layer set. In just a few months, Wang Sheng's skills and patience had actually improved qualitatively. Steward Zhou knew what had happened. Steward Zhou did not believe that Wang Sheng really did not know the huge profits of the real estate in the capital. He was afraid that Wang Sheng had already predicted this situation. Previously, when he said that the business was worth 10 billion, it could be that Wang Sheng was afraid that if he said too much, he would scare everyone and be afraid that they would not dare to do it. So he deliberately lowered it by 10 times. Seeing that Wang Sheng knew this result, he could still patiently carve the concentric balls bit by bit. His state of mind was much more stable than Steward Zhou's. Steward Zhou could not help but secretly give a thumbs up in his heart, full of admiration. Steward Zhou, who was still a little anxious on the way, was completely relieved after seeing Wang Sheng's performance. Duke Changsheng must have a way to deal with the possible situation. Others might not dare to say it, but Duke Changsheng would never let the Princess of Ning Kingdom suffer any grievances. After waiting for more than 2 hours, Wang Sheng finally put down the work in his hands. He had been concentrating for too long, so he needed to rest for a while to relax. Just when Wang Sheng put down his tools, the old Taoist also stopped, as if they had made an appointment. Mayor Rosa. Looking up and seeing the two girls, Wang Sheng first gave him a smile, then turned to Steward Zhou and apologized to him. Old Zhou, when did you come? I was too engrossed and did not hear you, sorry. Greetings, Duke. Greetings, old ancestor. Greetings, Princess of Ning Kingdom. At this moment, Steward Zhou did not have the prestige of a steward in the palace, and he greeted everyone one by one. But he did not feel the slightest grievance in his heart. Chapter 1187. The old Taoist usually didn't pay much attention to these things, but when he heard that Mayor and Rosa were frightened by gold coins, and that Steward Zhou seemed to have the same feeling, he couldn't help but be interested. In the Laojun Temple, although the old Taoist was the oldest, he had never managed anything related to money, and had always been a poor person. In the past, regardless of whether it was in the Laojun Temple or outside, he had heard that everyone had a common characteristic, which was that they didn't have enough gold coins. When they didn't have enough gold coins, they would desperately try to earn more gold coins. However, this was the first time he had heard of someone being frightened by gold coins. That's new. The old Taoist didn't care whether Steward Zhou felt awkward or not, and laughed directly. I've only heard of people who don't have enough gold coins, but I've never heard of people who are afraid of having too much gold coins. How much gold coins have you earned during this time? Wang Sheng was also curious. He hadn't heard Mei and the others talk about how much money Li Zhenlane had recently, so he didn't know the specific number. Old ancestor. This time Li Zhenlane earned 10 billion gold coins in 6 days. Rosa's status was the lowest among the people, so she could only answer for Mei. Just counting the gold coins alone, there were thousands of people, and they almost died of exhaustion. That's not to the extent. The old Taoist didn't seem to react. After saying a few words, he realized what the number was just now, and was shocked. How much did you say? 10 billion gold coins in 6 days. Rosa was shocked, but seeing that even old ancestor Ling Su was so surprised, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. She covered her mouth and laughed a few times before replying. That's less than 1/10 of the number. If they were really sold, I'm afraid it would be hundreds of billions of gold coins. You can't be blamed for this. The old Taoist suddenly understood, stroked his beard, and nodded. If it was the Laojun temple, I'm afraid that if they really took such a large sum of gold coins, they would also be worried to sleep. Although the old Taoist had always treated money like dirt, it was not that he did not know that gold coins were a good thing. Even though the old Taoist had a high cultivation base, he still felt a little guilty when faced with so many gold coins. Look at you bunch of good-for-nothings. When Wang Sheng heard that, he shook his head. Serves you right to be poor for the rest of your lives. Steward Zhou's eyes immediately lit up. Since Wang Sheng said so, it was obvious that he had a solution. That's great. I don't need to be so worried anymore. Please advise me, Duke. Steward Zhou didn't think it was shameful to ask Wang Sheng for advice in front of Ancestor Ling Su and the Princess of Ning Kingdom. Even if Rosa was here, she was also the Princess of Ning Kingdom's maid, right? Tell me first, why are you afraid of money? Wang Sheng asked with a smile. Because if you have too much money, it will naturally attract covetous eyes from all sides. How could Steward Zhou allow Princess Ningguo to reply at this time? Ancestor Ling Su was also not suitable, so it could only be him. The capital without the city walls was simply an unguarded, naked, and delicious cake. If there were another 100 billion gold coins inside, not to mention the major feudal lords, even the ordinary people would want to come in and grab a handful. Then you have earned a lot of gold coins. Do you plan to leave in the residence to look at? Wang Sheng couldn't understand the logic of these guys. Were they all just Pichio that only took in and didn't leave? Only knew how to earn money and not spend it? Duke, what do you mean? Steward Zhou seemed to have a vague idea, but he still couldn't figure it out and couldn't help but ask. What is the purpose of earning gold coins? Wang Sheng said with a smile. In the end, isn't it for spending? If you are afraid that too many gold coins in your hands will be coveted by others, then spend them. If you spend them, won't you have no more gold coins? What else will others covet? Mei Er's eyes lit up, as if she had understood something. Rosa also frowned and pondered. Steward Zhou raised his head and glanced at Wang Sheng, then lowered his head and pondered carefully. Old Zhou, Wang Sheng smiled at Steward Zhou and said, I believe that at any time, the emperor will always have many things he wants to do, but can't do because there are no gold coins in the treasury. So at any time, he can only think of ways to increase income and reduce expenditure, cutting off those unimportant things. Am I right? Steward Zhou nodded repeatedly, like a chicken pecking at rice. There were more than that. There were too many such things. Nurturing experts without money? Giving salaries to the officials of the imperial court without money? Repairing the imperial city without money? Getting new things in the palace without money? Raising an army without money? Repairing the various places in the capital without money? Giving relief to the people during a disaster year without money? Counting them one by one, a list of a few miles could be made. Spend. Wang Sheng saw Steward Zhou nod and smiled as he pointed out, spend the gold coins like flowing water. Spend it in a high-profile manner. Let people know that you have already spent the gold coins. Aren't we going to build a cultural center? Wang Sheng explained one by one. Invite people with great knowledge from all over, buy them a mansion, and gather them in one place. Invite the heirs of all kinds of theories to come over and let them research. There's already the Royal Academy of Arts, and now there is a cultural institute. Those who want to research can be teachers or students, and the royal family will support them. These will all have the right to speak in the future. Think about it carefully. When everyone says that the royal family is orthodox, who would dare to easily attack the royal family? Steward Zhou's eyes had already flashed a few times. The Duke was indeed a Duke. Just a random idea was enough to make people unable to resist it. It was simply amazing. Scholars must be invited. All kinds of acrobatics, storytelling, singing, rare delicacies, unique handicrafts, and so on. Everyone who wants to eat, drink, and be merry should all go to the capital. Wang Sheng continued. The more exciting things there are in the capital, the livelier the capital will be. More attractive? Build roads, courier stations, high-end restaurants, and hotels. Wang Sheng's fingers fell off one by one. Even if there is no property in the capital, it will not stop people from coming to the capital to play. All kinds of scenic spots can be researched, and everything is beautifully built. The main road is connected, and food, clothing, and transportation are all prepared. Cultured people will prepare elegant playthings, and ordinary people will prepare rare things. There will always be one that suits them. Aren't we building the capital? Mayor's plan is almost there. Every once in a while, it will be decorated with flowers, high-end atmosphere, and all kinds of comfortable and beautiful. Wang Sheng's ideas were thrown out one after another. Let people come to the capital, and when they go back, they can boast of those country bumpkins for half a year. Let everyone in the world dream of buying a house in the capital, and if it is a little inferior, they can come to the capital to play in their lifetime. All the big companies in the world want to open shops in the capital. Wang Sheng seemed to have transformed into the capital's planner. He pointed out the country and said energetically, as long as it is available in other places, the capital will have it. If it is not available in other places, the capital will have it. Think about it. Together with the money you spend on nurturing experts, 100 billion gold coins will only make a sound, right? What can it do? Be nervous. Nervous that the money will not be enough. Chapter 1188. Without the need to calculate carefully, Steward Zhou also knew that if he really did what Wang Sheng said, it would really be like what Wang Sheng said. What could 100 billion gold coins do? Not even half of it could be completed. But what Wang Sheng said was really tempting. All the scholars in the world had to gather in the capital city to study knowledge. Didn't that mean that if these people said that the Son of Heaven was the legitimate one, then he must be the legitimate one? Cultural center, economic center, it was simply a continuation of Wang Sheng's suggestion that year. Thinking of this, Steward Zhou couldn't stay any longer and immediately bade farewell to Wang Sheng. Duke, this servant will go back to report. His Majesty will definitely come over personally to discuss with Duke. There was no other way. What Wang Sheng said earlier was too general, but it was too tempting. Steward Zhou understood the Son of Heaven's current thoughts, and he was still anxiously waiting for Steward Zhou's reply. Now he had to hurry back and bring the news that the gold coins were not enough to the Son of Heaven. Then let the Son of Heaven slowly dig out more surprises from Wang Sheng's mouth. At the end of the day, Steward Zhou was actually here to ask if Wang Sheng had any ideas. If there really was a way, it would be the Son of Heaven who would understand it. Steward Zhou was merely a vanguard. Sai, it's just a small matter and it can make you so anxious. Wang Sheng shook his head and said to Steward Zhou, forget it, forget it. Tomorrow may err, and I will drop by the opposite side. You go and arrange it yourself. After Steward Zhou got the confirmation, he left in high spirits. Originally a 10th degree realm expert like him should not show his emotions, but now he was working for the Son of Heaven. Moreover, he was helping the Son of Heaven to solve the Son of Heaven's problems. He was even happier than his own cultivation advancement. To be able to become one of the royal family's 3 great officials, his skills in the small details had reached the point of perfection. Mayor was a smart person. When she heard Wang Sheng say that she should spend more money, how could she not understand what Wang Sheng meant? She was no longer worried. After Steward Zhou left, Mayor began to instruct Rosa. Check if there are any rare items in each country that are useful to us. Hurry up and buy a batch before they react. If she waited for those guys to react, they would definitely raise the price. Mayer would not suffer such a loss. Of course, Rosa had also thought of this. Without hesitation, she immediately went to make arrangements. Looking at the 2 women's vigorous and resolute style, Wang Sheng was quite emotional that there were 2 strong women in the family. The old Taoist sighed with emotion. It seemed like the logic in this world was the same. Going too far was as bad as falling short. When they didn't have any gold coins, they desperately wanted to earn gold coins. But when they had too many gold coins, they were constantly worried that they would cause trouble because of the gold coins. It was really ridiculous. The path of gold coins was like this, but wasn't the path of cultivation the same? Just as he and Wang Sheng had discussed before, it was not a good thing to blindly pursue a fast cultivation speed and raise the realm. If you went too far, it would be as bad as falling short. When you reached the big threshold, you would need a longer period of hard work to break through. On the contrary, those who conscientiously and honestly laid a solid foundation would be able to soar to the sky. Whether it was the old Taoist or the three great officials, they formed a sharp contrast with the Grand Abbé Dean. Faced with the old Taoist enlightenment, Wang Sheng also gave him a thumbs up, full of admiration. Even an old Taoist priest like Qian Duo and Qian Shao could figure out so many principles. As expected of a genius in cultivation. Old Taoist, it seems that you will soon reach the realm where you can integrate cultivation into your daily life, Wang Sheng said excitedly to the old Taoist, genuinely happy for the old Taoist. The old Taoist Ling Su was stunned. He was good at pondering and had a high-level cultivation. He could always think of something that ordinary people couldn't, but he didn't realize that this might be the only way to enter the next realm. The old Taoist only reacted after hearing Wang Sheng's words. Yes. A smile suddenly appeared on the old Taoist's face as he laughed heartily at Wang Sheng. So that's how it is. I was wondering how to get started in this realm. So that's how it is. Constantly trying to figure it out and comprehend it all the time. When one's skills are up to par, one will naturally enter that realm. So that's how it is. His hearty laughter was indescribably pleasant. Wang Sheng's eyes lit up, and he was sincerely happy for the old Taoist. At least he helped the old Taoist find the direction and method to get started. If the old Taoist could really reach that realm with this method, Wang Sheng would probably save a lot of effort and time when he cultivated to this stage in the future. Oh yes, Mayor Rosa. After talking to the old Taoist, Wang Sheng thought of something and instructed Mayor and Rosa, now that we are free, increase the daily expenses of the sisters in the Grand View Garden by several times. After cultivating the improved Yongchun cultivation method, the gold coins were simply flowing out like water. Previously, Tantai Yao estimated 500 million gold coins, but that was just the bottom line. Although the girls' cultivation was fast, but that was all. After all, Tantai Yao didn't dare to ask for an exorbitant price from Wang Sheng. Now that they had so much money on hand, and it was so much that Mayor was a little flustered. If they didn't spend it on their own people, when would they? Of course, Mayor wouldn't reject it. If the girl's cultivation was successful, they would all be her own people. Now that her hands were hurting from spending the gold coins, she naturally wouldn't be stingy with such expenses. We are all cultivating from the beginning, so there's no need to talk about the foundation. However, Rosa, including you, when you cultivate to the 8th-stage realm, be more careful and more careful. At least stay for a period of time before entering the 9th-stage realm. Remember this. Wang Sheng exhorted to Rosa seriously. He turned to Mayor and did the same. Mayor, you too. Mayor and Rosa didn't understand. When Wang Sheng and the old Taoist were talking about these martial arts cultivation, they weren't around. So the two girls looked at Wang Sheng in puzzlement, and then looked at the old Taoist in unison. The old Taoist nodded seriously. Sometimes, the reason didn't need to be too clear. Just like that time, when he didn't give the Grand Abbé Dean pointers, when the opportunity came, he would naturally understand the painstaking efforts. Wang Sheng had given such a serious order, and even the old Taoist priest was nodding his head solemnly. What else was there to doubt? The two girls immediately agreed in unison. Anyway, they knew that it was definitely not bad to have a solid foundation. Now, whether it was Mayor, Rosa, or the girls from the Grand View Garden, they didn't need to fight in the capital and desperately pursue cultivation. After knowing the general direction from Wang Sheng, the two girls no longer panicked. They didn't disturb Wang Sheng and the old Taoist who were carving the concentric balls. They found a place and happily thought about how to spend money. The emperor waited anxiously and finally waited for Steward Zhou to come back. As soon as he saw the joy on Steward Zhou's face, he knew that Wang Sheng must have a solution to the problem. When Steward Zhou explained Wang Sheng's vague method, the emperor and the empress were surprised and happy. They finally breathed a sigh of relief. The dignified emperor couldn't even wait to go to the opposite side of Wang Sheng's house the next day. The night before, he went to the emperor's courtyard with the empress and waited for Wang Sheng to come tomorrow. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.